Meet Kang Giama. He looks like your average Joe, but let's be real, he was just reincarnated into a world that's literally his favorite game. And right now, he's about to take the entrance exam for the prestigious Nobles Academy. Everyone here is rolling in cash, and our guy, totally broke. On the very first day, he went to register his sword, and the professor completely lost his mind. He thought this had to be some senior pulling an elaborate prank on him, but our boy didn't back down. These were his swords, he's poor, and his family can't even afford the tuition. The professor then noticed the green badge on his uniform. It marked him as a student who passed a special admission test. And suddenly, the prof got all misty-eyed seeing the kid's determination. The other rich students, however, were not feeling it. The moment they heard someone poor got in through special admission, they started complaining that the whole place was starting to stink. But despite the hostile vibe, Giama wasn't bothered one bit. In his past life, he never got to live peacefully. So this time, he's making it happen. He's young, good-looking, and on a mission. And even though he awakened a rare ability, trust me, it comes with a bizarre catch. He can only use swords that are under 30 centimeters long. Talk about a major handicap. When he first tested his awakened power, it was so intense he felt lightning just shoot out of the sword and blast through his entire body, the pain of activating it. It's just too much. If it's this bad every time, he is never using it again. He hoped maybe it was just a painful first time, but testing it again. The agony was exactly the same. Nearby, students were gathering for the ceremony that would officially set their ranks. All the top young talents were present, and sitting right at the top was one of the 7 legendary heroes, Klinga Sigfrid Faunabelang. Now this guy is a direct disciple of Yuam, the Academy's founder. You can bet every single student here knows and idolizes him, but the bored old man wasn't impressed. Not even the arrival of another one of the 7 heroes could cheer him up. This woman's curves were almost more famous than her title as the Sage of the 7 Heroes. She greeted the old man warmly. Her name is Media, and Siegfried immediately mocks her for being 70 years old while still dressing like a teenager, but Media didn't flinch. In fact, she took it as a compliment. She even offered that if Siegfried accepted her blessing, he could look 10 years younger in an instant. The old man refuses. The elderly have to accept their age, he says. Media has a youthful essence, and that's why she maintains her appearance. Despite his insults, the girl accepted his invitation to watch the Academy's opening day. She used to hate these kinds of events, but she came anyway. Why? She's curious to see Siegfried's granddaughter. All the gathered students looked like a sea of color with their dyed hair. Giama was the only one with black hair. And that just fueled the jokes about him not being a true noble, but everyone forgot all about him when a girl appeared. Her blue hair and powerful aura made every guy in the vicinity turn bright red. Siegfried's granddaughter, the one and only Sword Emperor. Her name is Abel von Nibelung, and she's the main heroine of this entire game. With her arrival, the exam was about to kick off. Let's see what they're up against. One of the ancient heroes created a pocket dimension in the Academy called the subspace. Inside, students can be injured and eliminated, but back in reality, their bodies are untouched. And that means any method of combat is allowed, even the absolutely lethal ones. It's an Academy tradition. The students who survive the longest get the best rank. Now the 2 old-timers are interested in a certain special student, but the others. They're all focused on the one with those very unique attributes. Gama could have been one of the guys to join the herd chasing after Abel. But he knows the real story behind this girl and her miraculous blessing. So while everyone follows their base instincts, he heads the complete opposite way. He's even reading a book on how to live a peaceful life in this crazy world. He also remembers that to fight here, he'd have to use that blasted ability. Yeah, better just give up. When the subspace transfer was announced, all of them were hyped, except Gama. But the moment it happened, his face was pure determination. After 7 minutes, several students were already sent back. The pure agony of how they got eliminated there left the entire crowd completely shaken. The media watched it all unfold, commenting that Abel took first place, but that was a given considering her family. The woman was absolutely thrilled to see Siegfried's granddaughter perform, but the man himself. He didn't see it that way. She failed to break the Academy record, which has been Siegfried's for ages. Just as the old man was about to walk off, an overwhelming pressure hits him like a punch to the gut. Everyone felt it. The students were frozen in fear, staring up at the sky. The media asked Siegfried if he felt it, if he knew what it was. Not even the great hero had a clue, but then all their attention turned to the sky. Don't blink because what happens next is insane. The sky itself was breaking. Then two people fall right out of it, getting completely smashed on impact. The silence in the arena was absolutely deafening. The media shouts for the medical team to get to the students. Then we flash back just a few minutes earlier. They were supposed to be fighting each other, but really, it was just a pair of brothers beating the living daylights out of everyone else. Because of these two, the outcome of this whole match was decided before it even started. This isn't a battle royale, it's a straight-up death match, and Giama knows exactly who's responsible. You guessed it, the evil twins, Mao Jun and Shun Mao. Two guys with a natural gift for brutal, sadistic violence. For the last 30 minutes, they've been deliberately toying with the weaker students, just enjoying the act of tearing them apart. Giama looks so pathetic they didn't even notice he was there. Eventually, all their playthings die, leaving the two brothers bored and looking for their next target. All that's left is a single girl, shivering as they point right at her. It's obvious they have horrible intentions, and Giama can't just stand by anymore. As Shunmao stalks towards the terrified girl, telling her she's perfectly his type, Giama has seen enough. That is the last straw. He yells from the back, finally catching the twins' attention. He just stepped in without a second thought, and now the two psychos, who hadn't even seen him before, have him locked in their sights. They see the color of his name tag and laugh him off as just some worthless special admission student. They decide to end him quickly and get back to the girl. Giama wonders what to do. Now facing them both, his painless blessing only lasts for 30 seconds. Not nearly enough time to deal with these monsters. There's only one choice left, and you and I both see the answer is in his bag of sashimi knives. But if he wields a blade, the blessing will activate, bringing that unimaginable, soul-crushing pain all over again. He just wanted a quiet life, and as you and I are about to see, that dream lasted less than half a day. He reaches into his bag and pulls out a knife, and the two brothers just burst out laughing. Shunmao is done wasting time and launches forward to take Giama out for good. Giama is cornered with no good options, but he's got one desperate plan left. He'll use his painless blessing for 30 seconds to cancel the agony from the sword god blessing. All he has to do is hold on. He activates his painless blessing right before pulling out the sashimi knife, and instantly the blessing of the sword god flares up. It roars to life just as Shunmao descends on him with a wicked smile on his face. There's only one way for Giama to survive this, if he can't cut his way through. He's dead, but now here's the crazy part. Can a sashimi knife actually cut a person? He remembers asking his old master, an ex-gangster, why thugs in the movies always use them. His master told him it was all just movie nonsense. He said you can't slash a person like a piece of fish, not even if a god comes down to help. But the blessing is crystal clear. If he wills it, he can cut it, and he's trusting that blessing. Trusting his power over his master, Giama thrusts his knife toward the giant man jumping at him. And in a single instant, Shunmao is sliced clean in half. The other students are floored. The remaining brother, Mao Jun, stares in absolute frozen shock, the quiet kid. The gloomy kid just did the impossible with a simple kitchen knife. Shunmao's body hits the ground. In two perfect pieces, his brother lets out a raw scream. He desperately tries to remember that this is just a subspace, that Shunmao isn't actually dead. But that doesn't change the horror he just saw. Mao Jun tells himself his brother must have just gotten careless. Now, as the last twin standing, he has to pick up the slack. He looks at his brother's fallen body and takes the power gauntlet for himself. With a gauntlet equipped on both hands, its true power finally awakens. Mao Jun's defense skyrockets, his jumping power increases by 200% and his fists now hit like a truck. And yeah, I know what you're thinking, he's unstoppable now, right? Wrong, because Giama isn't even paying attention to him, he's just focused on the countdown. He's tracking the seconds he has left before his powerful blessing runs out. Mao Jun sees an opening and rushes in for a sucker punch, while Giama is completely distracted. And then in a single flash, it's all over. Mao Jun is on the ground. He's covered in his own blood and barely alive, all while Giama finishes his countdown. The moment it hits 0, the painless blessing ends, and the full agony of the sword god blessing slams into him all at once. He screams, still clutching the knife, and finally collapses. Sometime later, Giama wakes up. He's in a white room, probably some kind of clinic, before he can even get up. Two people walk in. He's never met them, but he knows exactly who they are. Two of the legendary 7-star heroes, the strongest man alive, Siegfried, and the Academy's own director, Medea Poison. He can't help but wonder why two of the most powerful people in the world are here to see him. Medea asks for his name, but Siegfried gets straight to the point, his hand resting on his sword. He demands to know what on earth Giama just did. He explains that during the fight, they both felt a massive surge of power that could only have come from him. The hostility in the room is so thick you could cut it. Giama realizes he's being targeted by the strongest man alive. Now watch this, he makes an incredibly smart move. He starts by apologizing, saying his actions went too far, and tells them he's ready and accept the punishment. But as they lock eyes, Medea is forced to step in before a real fight breaks out. She tells Siegfried to lay off the kid and then drops a bombshell. And trust me, it changes everything. While Gama was unconscious, Siegfried had actually cleared his clogged meridians. Gama can't believe the swordmaster would even do that for him, but when he checks, his body definitely feels way lighter. Medea then explains they reviewed the video and concluded he was only defending a female student who was in trouble. She can't help but gush a little, calling Gama the handsome prince of her dreams, forcing Siegfried to physically pull her back. The main point, she says, is he's not getting in any trouble for his actions. Better yet, those twins had a horrible reputation anyway. And after what Gama did, they both decided to just withdraw from school. That is a massive relief for him, but that's not all. The real reason they're here is to congratulate him for being the #1 scorer in the entire school. And with that, you and I both know his dream of a quiet life is officially impossible. Later, back in Medea's office, the two heroes regroup. She's complaining about something she has never seen in her 20 years as the academy head. A student earned the top spot out of all the new candidates and then flat out rejected joining the highest class in the school, the star class. They tried to get him to reconsider, but Gama still didn't want it. Medea asks if Siegfried is annoyed that Gama took the top rank instead of his own granddaughter. After all, he saw his raw potential. But Siegfried doesn't see it that way. To him, this is just some immature kid trying to challenge the system. He says the subspace reflects the will of the founding hero. If the subspace chose Gama as #1, then the academy itself has chosen him as its top student, and that's final. But Siegfried has his own thoughts brewing. He sees Gama as a complete and utter mystery. If his skills were off the charts, or his physical stats were great, or even if he had a scrap of experience, it would make sense. But Siegfried could tell he had none of that. And yet, watching that video replay, he saw the pure essence of skill in how Gama moved. It was the ultimate form of swordsmanship, the very thing he's been chasing his whole life. When he was clearing Gama's pressure points, he sensed how weak his body was, how he'd clearly never had any real physical training. But it also felt like something was stored deep inside him that you and I can't even begin to comprehend. Because of that, he's feeling this crazy competitiveness towards a kid the same age as his granddaughter. Media, on the other hand, is more hung up on the fact that he's seriously good-looking. She's still smitten that he showed his skills just to save a woman in danger. She jokes that if she were only 10 years younger, she would definitely make a move. Lost in thought, Siegfried stays silent until she asks him what he's thinking. He doesn't answer and instead asks her what she thinks students call people like her. Curious, the head administrator tells him to go on. His answer is absolutely not what she wants to hear, and she completely explodes with rage. Meanwhile, Giama goes to attend his first class. Since he rejected the star class, the best they could do was downgrade him to the wolf class. Any lower and the elders would have thrown a fit. He was originally aiming for tiger class, but Medea practically begged him to join wolf class. In exchange, she promised to keep his identity as the top student a complete secret. See, he wanted to finish his studies quietly in a lower tier class, rather than fighting for the top spot in a higher one. Wolf class is a bit high, but it's still manageable for his plan to lay low. Giama pushes open the massive doors, stepping into his new classroom. For a second, every student stares at him with a bit of curiosity. Then they spot his badge. Special admission, and just like that, nobody cares about him anymore. Which is perfect for Giama. Them ignoring him means Medea kept her side of the deal. Now all he has to do is enjoy the peaceful school life he's always wanted. He finds a desk just as a familiar face walks toward him, looking nervous. She shakily thanks him for his help from before, but Giama has absolutely no idea who this is. She quickly clarifies she's the girl he saved back during the entrance test. Giama just brushes it off, telling her she doesn't need to bother thanking him. After all, he says, literally anyone else in that spot would have done the exact same thing. It might seem like he saved her, but deep down, he feels he only did it to save himself. Accepting her thanks would make him feel like a fraud. So he dodges the topic and just introduces himself instead. The girl does the same, revealing her name is Chloe. What an odd coincidence that they both ended up in the same exact class. Now pay attention because Giama tries to place that name, a character named Chloe. He searches his memory of the game, but comes up with nothing. Maybe she was added after he quit. No, that makes zero sense. The game's main story was already way too far along to just drop in a new character. It looks like he just ran into another extra, a character who isn't supposed to be here, just like him. He asks her to keep what happened during the exam a total secret. He can't have his real power getting out and ruining his quiet life. Chloe agrees, but starts to ask for a favor of her own before their homeroom teacher storms into the room, shouting at the top of his lungs. Giama tells her to head back to her seat so they can chat later. The teacher, a guy named Lee Wanbin, congratulates all the new students in Wolf class. Since it's day one, he wants to start with some basic physicals. 100 push-ups, sit-ups, and squats, followed by 10 laps around the training field. For these genius nobles, who've been training their whole lives, this is nothing more than a light warm-up. For Giama, though, you and I both know this is the kind of training that will 100% make him go bald. He nervously shuffles up to the teacher after everyone else has already left the room. He tries to get out of it, saying he's not feeling strong enough for the training. But surprise, not only does the teacher know his name, he seems to think Giama is some kind of legend. Looks like Medea wasn't so subtle about how impressed she was with him. Lee Wanbin even knows Giama has permission to take classes from any level he wants. He politely turns down the chance to move up, telling the teacher he just really needs to use the restroom right now. And that's how Giama is forced to join the hellish exercise with the rest of his class. They all sprint past him with ease, while he's already falling behind, feeling like he's about to collapse. You and I are catching up with Giama just as Chloe notices he looks completely wiped out. She casually mentions she's already on her ninth lap, which is just insane. She gives him a little encouragement, then zooms off to finish her last one. Later that day, Giama gets back to his dorm and slams several bottles of water. It's only been a week at the academy, and he's already hit some serious snags. After his brutal training, he bolted to the cafeteria, only to learn the meals weren't free. The moment he saw the price for a single spicy pork rice, he completely froze. And here's the real problem: just remembering that price sends his bottle flying into the wall. He's almost broke and is now kicking himself for not taking the money his father offered him. For the past few days, he has been surviving on literally nothing but water. Yeah, the cheapest water he could find at the campus store. He's so hungry, he even misses the free dinners from his days in the army. For now, he's just trying to think of anything else to distract himself from the hunger. The first thing that pops into his head is his blessing, and up comes the status screen. It's definitely gotten a lot longer than the last time he checked. His physical level has increased, which upgraded his blessing of the sword god. Now it can activate with slightly longer blades, which is a nice little bonus. He checks himself out in the mirror and yep, the physical progress is obvious. It's probably thanks to the swordmaster activating all his pressure points. His body feels like it's on a whole other level, like it's completely evolved. But the sword god's blessing still only works on blades the size of a sashimi knife. Still, if he keeps this up, maybe one day he'll graduate to a small sword. His hands are even starting to itch when he's not holding a blade, a weird side effect of the blessing. Suddenly, a knock on the door. He opens it, and it's KH Lo. She asks if she's interrupting, and he just asks her why she's even here. Turns out she hadn't seen him in the cafeteria and came to see if he was okay. He lies, saying he doesn't really eat food other people make. Inside, though, his stomach is screaming at just the thought of a real meal. KH Lo looks a little bummed, saying she was hoping they could grab dinner together. And yeah, you and I knew that was all it would take. He's instantly dressed and ready to go. Later that evening, the two enjoy an incredible meal cooked by Giama himself. KH Lo is beyond impressed. She grew up near the ocean and loves fish. And since Giama's specialty is fish, it's pretty much a perfect match. Plus, that itch in his hands to hold a knife hadn't gone away at all. So it's the perfect chance to practice slicing up some sashimi, but there's a problem. The blessing of the sword god activates even with a simple kitchen knife. He asks KH Lo if she has a bigger knife, saying it's weird to use his weapons for cooking. She disappears into her room and comes back with a massive sword, way too big for a fish. With no other option, he's forced to use his blessing for this. The painless blessing only lasts for 30 seconds, so he has to be quick. He was once called the greatest swordsman in his country for a reason. And slicing fish, that has always been his absolute specialty. Time to prove it. He flawlessly carves the fish, finishing the entire thing in 21 seconds. That leaves 9 whole seconds of the blessing to spare, an absolute master at work. He'd call it a masterpiece, and that's when Chloe finally asks him how he did it. Turns out he's an amazing cook, confessing that he used to work part-time. At a Japanese restaurant, no less. Being a noble, she has no idea what that even means, highlighting just how far apart their worlds really are. Now that they've eaten, Chloe offers to wash the dishes since he handled all the cooking. So he moves across the room to give her some space. For the first time in nearly a week, he's actually full. He can't help but hum with joy, but that tune is cut short as KH Lo accidentally drops a plate behind him. It's pretty obvious she's never had to clean dishes before in her life. Dropping plates is something he remembers doing when he was around her age. As he just stares out the window, ignoring the chaos behind him, a book suddenly tumbles off KH Lo's desk. It looks like a diary, and it just happens to fall open on a page where she's written about him. Specifically, about him saving her during the class placement test. Her handwriting is adorable, with rounded letters and stickers, and he finds himself picking up the book and smiling at it. A gust of wind from the window flips the pages to another section, where she writes about being in the same class and her growing interest in him. He thinks it's all just really cute, unable to stop himself from flipping through more pages, admiring her charm. He turns a few more pages and sees his name again, followed by page after page filled with the words, "I love you," written over and over. Then another plate shatters, and he turns to see Kh just staring at him with cold, terrifying eyes. She simply asks him if he read her diary. Now pay attention, because Khlo's emotionless state isn't just a mood swing. It's a core part of her upbringing, more like a self-defense mechanism. In this world, heroes earn respect by killing demonic beasts, which lets them climb the social ladder and gain a global reputation. But inside their ranks, there are corrupt factions that abuse the weak under the guise of authority. And when the law is powerless to punish them, a different group is called from the shadows to take care of business. The name of that family is Auditor Sicily. They are a clan that maintains order by carrying out assassinations. They're known for working in the darkness to lead the world towards the light. Anyone born into the Auditor family begins their assassination training before they even hit their teens. Their emotions are completely restrained as they undergo brutal training, forged into perfect killing machines. Chloe is one of them. She's a member of this blood-stained family, and the first time she took a life was at the young age of 15. She was taught her whole life to never underestimate her skills as an assassin, which has made her hyper-aware of everything around her. But over time, the relentless training distorted her personality, forming a dark shadow over her heart. By the time her true identity was almost completely worn away, leaving only faint traces of emotion, Khlo was old enough to enter the academy. Walk-in Academy is a place that sorts students into classrooms based on their raw talent. Every single student there is at least dragon level or higher. But the members of the Auditor family, who thrive in the shadows, were assigned to the common class by their family's decree. It was part of an agreement between the family and the academy. "You and I both know what this means," she was told to go undetected. And throughout her childhood, the family eliminated every single individuals. Let's dive into the story of Khlo, an assassin who accepted her dark fate without protest. She truly believed that nothing in her life would ever change, that is, until one fateful day. She met someone she would never be able to forget, standing defenseless and still. As two vicious brothers walked towards her, the weakest-looking person there stood up to defend her. Now, even though death in the subspace battle royale is all fake and there's no real danger, this boy still tried to save her life. Chloe had already accepted her end, just waiting for whatever fate had in store. She had given up on pointless struggles long ago, and her training taught her to be meek, to be unnoticeable. But somehow, thanks to this boy's interference, it was like the sun broke through the clouds in her mind. She watched him use his sword not to kill, but in self-defense, to protect her. And the moment she saw him fighting for her sake, she suddenly remembered a children's fairy tale she used to secretly read under her pillow. It was the story of a princess trapped in a castle, rescued by a noble prince. As those memories flooded her mind, her chest began to tingle and her cheeks flushed red. This strange, new feeling bubbling up inside her was, without a doubt, love. And here's where Giama commits the ultimate sin, by looking into the private thoughts of this very girl. As she stares him down, he tries to act casual. But he knows, deep down, he is absolutely screwed. He scrambles to figure out exactly how he even ended up in this mess. Was it when he read the pure feelings of a teenage girl? Or maybe the moment he foolishly followed her just because she offered him some food? No matter how it happened, he was now staring death right in the face, in the form of this girl. His number one priority, get out of here, alive, he quickly changes the topic, commenting on how beautiful the moon is, while desperately trying to find a way to escape the room without getting his head lopped off. But she doesn't let him finish his sentence, asking him again, did he see her diary? He tries to play it off, pretending he only saw some reference book, and even compliments her on how hard she's been studying, but no amount of flattery is going to save him now. He can't believe she even saw him reading it in the first place since she was busy washing the dishes while he took a peek. Now pay attention here, because everything's about to change. She's dropped the formal speech she was using with him. It's like she became a completely different person in the blink of an eye. He swears he didn't see it, but she keeps pressing him until finally he admits that he did. The second those words leave his mouth, Chloe decides his life is over, pulling out the very same sword she had offered him earlier to cut fish. Giama frantically looks around, weighing his options. They're on the fourth floor, so jumping out the window is a no-go. The only escape route for him is right through the front door. But Chloe is definitely not going to let him just walk out of there, not in one piece anyway. She is dead serious, coming right at him with that sword, and his time is officially running out. He tries to figure out why she's suddenly like this, and only one horrifying answer comes to mind. Her unblinking pupils and those dark red eyes can only mean one thing. He's dealing with a textbook yandere, but considering her sudden switch from an adorable, sweet girl into a ruthless killer, it gets even worse. Trust me, what you and I are looking at is a yandere with a split personality. Her personality alone is a handful, but throw in a dual personality disorder. That makes things 1,000 times worse. Looks like him opening her diary is what triggered this side of her. This is dangerous, but he knows for a fact that she will chase him to the ends of the earth if he doesn't do something to snap her out of it. He has to find a way to take the initiative today and secure his own future, or things will only get worse. The only way he's making it out of this room alive is with a weapon. But he only has 9 seconds left after using 21 just to slice some fish. His sashimi knife is back in his room, but he can still use that kitchen knife from earlier. But there's absolutely no way he can reach that without getting his arms sliced clean off. He frantically looks around again and spots a box cutter on her desk. There's nothing else he can use. But come on, can this little thing really be enough to activate the blessing of the sword god? Now, you and I are about to see. Khlo finally charges at him with her sword, and it looks like it's time to find out. He grabs the box cutter, knocking the rest of the stationery to the floor. And then he slides out the blade. A whole mess of status screens pop up in his vision. Being this resourceful under pressure actually increases his mental resilience. And he temporarily gets an intimidation buff. The system then makes the necessary adjustments right before activating the blessing. Chloe lunges at him with her sword just as Giama pulls back with the tiny box cutter. But before she can cut him down, he calmly tells her that her hair is getting a little long. Thanks to that intimidation buff, Khlo freezes for a split second right as Giama unleashes the blade. Everything goes black. By the time Khlo wakes up later that evening, her room is dark, completely tidy, and totally empty. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Where in the world did he go? She calls out his name a few times, but the silence is all the confirmation she needs. She's all alone in her room. The last thing she remembers is sneaking glances at him while he stared out her window. But everything after that is a complete blur. She suddenly feels the urge to look for her katana, but she sees it leaning safely against her study desk. She sometimes loses consciousness when she holds her katana, but it looks like she managed to keep herself in check this time. At least that's what she's telling herself, back when she was younger and still honing her skills. She would completely black out just from holding her blade. And by the time she'd wake up, the place would be covered in blood. Her elders would just dismiss her questions whenever she asked what happened while she was out. They would always just tell her not to deny her talent as an assassin. Still, the fact she can't remember what happened with Giama makes her feel so embarrassed, and she buries her face in her bed, completely ashamed. But that shame quickly turns into something else entirely as she starts thinking about him. Then she notices the box cutter lying on the floor, and that her hair seems a little shorter. Inside her trash bin, she also finds some of her own hair, neatly cleaned up. In that moment, she's convinced he must have helped her cut her hair, and she immediately opens her journal to write about her deep love for him yet again. Gama, on the other hand, is not feeling nearly as romantic as Chloe is right now. In fact, at this very moment, he can barely believe that he's even still alive. Behind an inconspicuous wall on the far side of the campus, he throws up the meal he was just given, praising Kh Lo for the meal. He barely survived the first 5 seconds after his 9-second painless blessing wore off. And even then, he feels absolutely sick. And after heaving up his only decent meal in a week, Gama collapses on a bench to figure out what to do. You and I know he's hungry again and feels even worse than before Kh Lo showed up. His thoughts drift back to Kh Lo, and he starts to wonder who she really is. Her swordsmanship is clearly designed to end an opponent's life in a single blow, or at the very least, take them down instantly. The way she moves, it's like she is constantly aiming for vital spots, almost like her entire technique is built for assassination. If she'd caught him off guard, Gama knows he would not have survived. He felt his life was being threatened, and you can see he instinctively went for her neck. Luckily for her, his knife was too short, so he only managed to slice off a lock of her hair. He cleaned up the mess before he left, so that shouldn't cause any issues down the line. But this just proves that his dream of a safe and peaceful life is way harder than it looks. Turns out being ordinary is the toughest challenge for him. When he was first dropped into this world, it wasn't like he had zero ambition. In his past life, he reached the absolute peak of skill with just a sashimi knife. So it's not easy to just let go of his dreams, but everyone has a role to play. And in this world, he was summoned to be nothing but a background character. The miracle blessing is the name of the game and the protagonist's ultimate power. It was also the blessing of the legendary founding hero, Valor Jason. In the entire game, the main character and that founding hero were the only two people to ever have. This legendary power and its purpose was crystal clear. They exist to save the world from the Demon King, simple as that. So the hero gets chosen by Bamong, an SS-rank sword that's both holy and cursed. Meanwhile, what does Gama have? A cheap, rankless sashimi knife. And let's be real, that pretty much seals his fate as a nobody. The non-stop stream of insane people and crazy events he's faced since arriving at the academy almost made him forget his one simple goal. There were so many reasons to just give up on his dream of a simple life. And it's looking even more impossible now that it seems like no one in this world is normal. Since he's played the game, he has a decent read on all the major players, but his actual knowledge of this world is pretty limited. It's been a full week since he enrolled in the academy, which means the protagonist should have already awakened his blessing and started the late admission process. This is where the game's main story finally kicks off. And while Gama knows the plot, he never actually played it all the way to the end. For the first time, he genuinely regrets rage-quitting the game halfway through. But still, since he knows the main story route for the first half, that gives him a huge edge. All he has to do is stick to the canon plot, no matter what happens. If he starts messing with events, he'll immediately lose the only advantage he has. From what he remembers, the story takes a sudden dark turn around the second semester of the third year. That's when the demons realize the hero has awakened, launching an attack on the academy led by a demon general. Legion Commander. As the fighting gets worse, the demons and humans fall into a full-blown war. From there, the game's plot becomes a totally generic fantasy story. Back when he played, he just wanted a taste of the simple, easygoing youth he never got to have as a teen. So he deleted the game without a second thought, the only problem. Now he's actually living in that world, a world destined for total war. And you and I know that means he could very well die, too. He's got 3 years until then, though, and he has to stop running and focus on what he can actually do. He's not gonna let himself die. He's going to get stronger, strong enough to survive. Besides, cliché games like this always have a happy ending where the hero somehow manages to save the day. All he needs is the power to protect himself. He refuses to be some helpless background character that just gets killed off. He just needs to train enough to stay alive while keeping his head down as much as possible. To do that, he'll need to limit his use of the blessing of the sword god, because the few times he's relied on it have put a massive strain on his body. Sure, it's a powerful ability, but it comes with way too many downsides for his taste. Just thinking about the blessing again activates a status window with more info. And pay attention here, because there are new entries he's never seen before. The 3 new stats are body, mind, and armament grade. And the numbers next to them look like levels. They all show how much he's grown, and each one will reduce the physical toll of his blessing. There's also something called synchronization, but he has no clue what it is. And its description is just a bunch of question marks. He tries tapping it, but access is denied. He hasn't met the conditions yet. Just another mystery to solve about this strange power, but it's not important right now. His top priority is improving his physical condition and finding a new weapon. He can't rely on those 30 seconds of pain-free power forever. So he also needs to learn to fight with a sword that doesn't meet the blessing's strict conditions. Luckily, there's a monster hunting training exercise for the midterms coming up in a month. The prize for that training is the longsword Morzamor. It's a B-tier weapon, which should be good enough until graduation. It's also too big for his blessing to work, which means it's the perfect weapon for him to train with. He's got a lot to figure out, but it already feels like he's making some real progress. Lost in thought, a voice suddenly calls out to him. He looks up, and staring down at him is someone he never, ever expected to talk to. It's Abel von Nibelung, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor. You and I both know she's the one person he shouldn't interact with if he wants to keep the game's story from changing. She tells him he's in her seat, but he's so stunned he just freezes for a second, forcing her to yell at him before his brain finally catches up and he scoots over. He still can't get over how beautiful Abel is and realizes he was just staring without even meaning to. As he starts to leave, she tells him he doesn't have to go, he can just move over a little. Pretty weird for her to call a public bench her seat, but he decides not to argue. He wants zero involvement. Stick with me because this whole situation is wild. He can't help but stare at her. As the game's heroine, she is stunning, and then suddenly she speaks. Giama snaps back to reality, completely startled. This is just way too weird. The Abel he knows is an ice queen who never talks to anyone. Even the game's handsome main character couldn't get her to warm up to him. She keeps talking, asking if he also uses a blade as his main weapon. He nervously says yes, then asks her how she could possibly know. Her grandpa once told her swordsmen have a different fire in their eyes. She shows him her sword, asking if he wants to hold it. The whole situation feels off, so he politely declines, but that just makes her annoyed. He can feel her annoyance, but her talking to him is just too strange. Then she asks him a direct question, "Do you know me?" Gama's surprised. What a strange question for her to ask. There is no one in the school who doesn't know her. He gives a bland, non-committal answer. He says he sort of knows her. She immediately points out that she doesn't know him. And she thinks that's a little unfair, the fact that he knows her but she has no idea who he is. Giama doesn't get it, they literally just met. It's not a big deal, but she argues he could very well be a spy for the Demon King, sneaking into the academy disguised as a student. She calls him suspicious, being out here all alone this late at night. And even though she's just saying random stuff, it almost feels like she's actually testing Giama, so he turns the question right back at her. Why are you out so late? From her clothes and weapon, it's clear though. She just finished up some intense training for the night. She says she was doing breathing exercises, pointing at him while she speaks. giving him a full view of the calluses and scars on her hands. She quickly hides them, but he already saw. They're proof of her dedication. And for her, of all people, working hard is basically a requirement. People don't understand the pressure of the Nebulan bloodline. You're expected to be perfect, always at the top of your game. One mistake and you become an instant target, then Abel reveals she isn't. The top student. And here's the twist. Instead of being upset, she says she feels strangely free. But she can't help wondering who beat her and became the top scorer. She'd love to meet this person, so she can tear them to absolute shreds. That makes Giama choke in shock. He asks her why she'd go that far. Her reason, simple. She feels utterly and completely humiliated. She begged her grandpa for the name, but that person isn't even in her class. Plus, this mystery person also skipped the speech, forcing her to do it instead. And that was even more embarrassing, having to speak as the second-place student. She stops herself mid-rant, realizing how weird this is. Especially spilling all this personal information to a complete stranger she just met. Taking his chance, Giama finally asks the one question he's had this whole time. He just wants to know, why is she even talking to him? And yeah, that's the question we've all been wondering, what gives? This is definitely not what she expected, and trust me, the reason is kinda wild. Her family's motto is simple: be unyielding to the strong, but merciful to the weak. And since all her classmates are basically unbearable, she has zero friends. Which totally explains why she's so cold to the protagonist in the game. With that settled, she gives a little stretch and prepares to head out. But she pauses for a second, asking if he's really not going to tell her his name. Just like before, Giama refuses. No room for negotiation. End of story. Time keeps passing, and to Giama's surprise, his academy life is actually peaceful. Chloe seems to have made some new friends, not including him, of course. She has settled into the class just fine, and Giama has been keeping his distance. He's been busy avoiding her ever since that whole incident in her room. Sometimes their eyes meet, and her new friends just glare at him with total disdain. It's all because of his status as a special entrant, but Giama has learned to stop caring. He's over worrying about people who look down on him for being different. After all, he isn't the only special entrant in their class anyway. Though there aren't many of them, and they've all become experts at avoiding each other. Yeah, you can feel the inferiority complex from a mile away. But Giama is certain things would be so much worse in a higher-tier class. By now, the students in the Star and Dragon classes have probably split into factions. They're all wrapped up in their own petty power struggles, for sure. Even back when he played the game, it was pretty shocking to witness. But now that he's actually living in this world, the thought alone is terrifying. In some good news, though, he's finally been getting proper meals. That's all thanks to a special privilege the director gave him the other day. For being the top scorer in the school, he got a faculty card. It lets him eat absolutely anything he wants from the cafeteria for free. He is so thankful for this little gift that bowing to the director's office 3 times a day doesn't even feel like enough to express his gratitude. On top of that, he's been fulfilling all his duties as a student perfectly. All while making damn sure he doesn't do anything to change the main story. His plan, just keep this up for the next 3 years, and you and I both know that's not gonna happen. The days go by smoothly, and Giama attends all his classes without a single problem. During one of his classes, an old teacher begins educating the students. He tells them about the hero Valor Jokin, who founded this very academy. Jokin recognized the need to train the next generation of heroes. Giama already knows all this from the game. The founding hero, Valor Jokin, faced Lycan, the Demon King's right-hand man and the commander of the First Legion. The battle went on for 20 years, and in the end, the hero came out on top. However, Jokin paid a heavy price for his victory, losing one of his arms. As a result, his fighting days were over for good. The war was pure carnage and bloodshed, and even though the hero won his battle. There was no clear winner of the war on either side. And just like that, the first human-demon war ended in a truce. To prepare the next generation, Jokin founded the Academy and a pact was signed. That pact is the reason there's been 700 years of peace, a peace that, trust me, is not going to last. The students are absolutely sure they'll never see a war in their lifetime, but our guy Giama, he's the only one who knows that peace is about to be shattered. Everyone is so used to the quiet life, and who could blame them? The one person he desperately wants to warn about the coming storm is Medea. But doing that would completely derail the main story, and he has no idea what chaos that would cause. Despite always complaining about wanting to quit her job as the Academy, director Medea was one of the first to sense that something was wrong. All thanks to her unique blessing of perception and to protect her students. She was the first of the 7 stars to charge onto the front lines. The thing is, Giama never got that far in the game. But he did learn her fate from a quick search on the game's fan wiki. Medea, the first of the 7 stars to die fighting the Demon King's army. Now pay attention, because knowing this makes it almost impossible to keep quiet, and he wishes he never found out. Class ends and students start pouring into the halls. Drawn by some kind of huge commotion outside, looks like the main event is finally kicking off. Giama quickly checks his phone, just as he thought. May 5th, the day the protagonist is scheduled to finally enroll in the academy. He joins the crowd of students packed at the classroom door, all of them completely starstruck. Some are already betting he'll join the elite star class. And just as the script demands, the protagonist of the game strolls down the hall as the crowds part for him like the sea, Leon van Reinhardt. He walks with an aura of pure confidence, a world apart from his peers. But Giama knows that today is the day 700 years of peace begins to crumble to dust. Giama watches as practically everyone in the school fawns over him, not that he's surprised. He already knew this would happen. In the game, it seems like every woman just falls for the guy. Honestly, if this were an adulterated game, Leon would have been taken out long before he ever faced the Demon King. And among all the women drawn to him, the ones who eventually become his party members, they're crazy impressive too. It's annoying just thinking about it, but Leon van Reinhardt, the hero of Miracle Blessing M, is going to be one of the first people drafted in 3 years. And when he says draft, it's more like a mandatory enlistment. If Giama gets pulled in too, this will be his 2nd tour in the army. But here's the kicker, the hero barely managed to seal the 1st Legion commander. It just makes Giama wonder how monstrously strong the actual Demon King is. There's no way the protagonist is going to lose though, right? As he's lost in thought, his eyes suddenly lock with Leon's. The protagonist flashes him a charming smile. Almost as if he's reassuring Giama without a clue what's on his mind. He's the main character after all. And you and I both know there's no way he can't handle this stuff. Giama turns to leave the scene, but a voice suddenly calls out his name from behind. It's Chloe, and she's timidly asking if she did something wrong. He'd love to tell her she nearly chopped his head off. But they're stuck together for the next year, and he doesn't want to make things super awkward between them. So he lies, saying everything's fine. Just hoping to keep the peace so he doesn't end up with another enemy he doesn't need. Chloe seems relieved, and just like that, she's back to her cute act, a total 180 from before. The murderous psychopath from that day, even unconscious, he could feel it. Her sword style was filled with pure sorrow, almost like a blade that was begging to be saved. And yet, the killing intent pouring off that edge was so sharp it made his skin crawl, if her swordsmanship was purely for killing. Then she was probably way more dangerous than both the mouse siblings combined. He snaps out of it when she asks to treat him to dinner again. She insists on treating, but warns him she's not as good a cook as he is. Just the thought of dinner with her brings back the memory of that bloodlust, and his first instinct is to refuse. But let's be real, a cute girl's puppy dog eyes are a terrifying weapon. It's basically impossible for him to say no to that face, and he feels bad for even considering it. But if he accepts, he might just wake up inside a refrigerator tomorrow. Instead of dinner, he cooks up a much better idea for them to spend time together. He asks her for a favor, telling her she's the only one who can do it for him, and Khlo immediately goes docile. Gama wants her to teach him swordsmanship. Besides, he needed an instructor anyway. Later, at the school training grounds, he swings a wooden sword, testing his own limits. Just as he thought, the sword's size doesn't mess with his blessing. Now all he has to do is actually get good with it. Khlo is insanely strong. She's the perfect person to train him. And it's a pretty solid excuse for him to keep avoiding dinner with her. Ever since that fight, he's made sure to watch a video called Surviving a Yander before bed. And trust me, it seems to be helping him handle Khlo for now. She walks up to him in casual clothes, katana strapped to her hip. He just got there since they agreed to meet at 8, but she's been waiting since 6. Gama can't help but admire her for a second. Her crop top gives a clear view of her toned muscles. He never noticed before, since he's only seen her in a school uniform, but that would explain her insane strength. He hands her another wooden sword, and Khlo seems confused why they aren't using real ones. There is no way they're training with real swords. They are definitely not fighting for their lives here, so there's no need to use actual lethal weapons. Khlo happily takes the wooden sword and gives it a test swing. The power from a single thrust sends a small shock wave blasting right between them. She's so strong the very air around them trembles from that one strike. Now Gama's having serious second thoughts about this. For now, he needs to play this safe. Before their training starts, he decides to check his blessing one last time. The sword's length isn't an issue, thankfully, and his body has been growing stronger. But now that he's thinking about it, it's weird for a blessing to upgrade with experience. He can't remember if blessings also have other side effects. And he still has no idea how much more he needs to grow before that mysterious hidden trait finally shows up. Khlo walks over and asks him what's wrong, and he remembers only he can see his status screen. To her, he probably just looks like a crazy person spacing out. He turns to start. Let's dive into their training. He nervously asks Khlo to go easy on him since it's their first day. He then readies his sword and faces her. In his past life, he learned everything through pure, hands-on experience. He's a firm believer that to truly master something, you can't just give a part of yourself. You must be ready to sacrifice your entire being. The real reason he adapted so quickly in the academy was because of the intense training he received in his class. He learned from a young age how to tell when he was improving and when he was stagnant, and even now. He can feel it, things aren't perfect, not in his stance or his grip on the sword. But despite all that, the final stroke must always find its target. He opens his eyes to start the duel and sees Khlo already rocketing towards him at full speed. He barely has time to dodge her first strike before Khlo switches her stance and launches another attack, which he is just barely able to parry. Somehow, as the fight goes on, she just keeps getting faster, and Gama is struggling just to keep up with her insane pace, and on top of all that, she's probably still holding back since he asked her to go easy on him. Her sword slams into his again, and this time, the wood actually begins to crack from the sheer force. Her relentless onslaught of attacks doesn't slow down one bit, and she continues to hammer away while he barely manages to parry and dodge. With how much power she's using, you and I both know if he gets hit by even one attack, he might actually die, and he can't find a single opening for a counter. But before he can even come up with a plan, his sword has finally had enough and snaps clean in half. Khlo tries to apologize, saying she was going as gently as she possibly could. But she still ended up breaking it. That is the least of her worries, though, because the sword has now been reduced in size and length. Which, unfortunately for her, means it now meets the conditions for the sword god blessing to activate. But something is terribly, terribly wrong. The weapon was damaged, which triggers a critical error in the system. The suppressive force that should be holding back the blessing's full power instead begins twisting and altering Giama's personality. By the time the alteration is complete, his humanity level has plummeted, leaving a cold fighting shell. Now we get to see what that truly means. The sword god's divine blessing fully activates as Giama turns to her with his broken wooden sword, a menacing aura exploding around him. Khlo stumbles back as Giama's entire attitude clearly begins to shift. While Giama's body seems to be moving on autopilot, inside his mind, he's returned to his past body and finds himself standing in his old kitchen. Everything feels like a surreal dream. And right now, all he can think about is cleaning and cutting the fish that has just appeared in front of him. He doesn't remember what he was doing moments ago, but right now. All that matters is getting back to work. It's been a while since he's worked on a fish like this one, so he decides he'll cut it using a Chinese cleaver this time. As he tries to pick it up, a message flashes, informing him that he can't. Since that isn't working, he tries to pick up the knife, but once again, a message pops up telling him he can't pick it up. There's only one option left, and it's the sashimi knife. That's the only blade the system will allow him to grab. But he remembers that if he holds the sashimi knife, then it's going to hurt, and yet he picks it up and it's completely fine. In fact, he actually feels refreshed. A voice whispers in his mind, telling him to just accept it all and let go. Meanwhile, in the real world, Giama keeps walking towards Khlo, knife in hand. She tries calling his name, but his eyes are filled with pure bloodlust, and here's where this friendly spar turns deadly. He lunges forward and Khlo barely, just barely, gets her sword up in time to block. With a single push, he sends her flying backwards, crashing hard right into a wall. This power feels completely different from their earlier sparring. He leaps at her again, trying to stab her with the sharp end of his stake, but she scrambles back just in time, narrowly dodging the blow. Khlo took just one hit, but her body can barely move. She has no idea how Giama suddenly became this monster. But she has to stop this fight before he actually ends up killing her. She begs him again to stop, but Giama is silent, launching at her again. He's moving with blinding speed. And at this point, you and I both know she can't possibly dodge this. All she can do is scream for him to stop, finally shouting his name just as the broken sword comes crashing down towards her head. Back in Giama's mind, he's wondering why this fish he's trying to cut keeps dodging him. Weird. The fish is also making a ton of noise, bouncing all over the place, and he can just barely make out what it's saying. It sounds like a name. The sound gets clearer and clearer until he hears the fish calling out for someone named Giama. The fog in Chef Kim's mind begins to lift, and he realizes he is Giama. The fish is calling for him. He snaps back to reality just as he's about to stab Khlo with that broken sword. But just before the wood pierces her skin, Giama hurls the weapon away, slamming it into the wall. He stopped just short of killing his own friend. Khlo opens her eyes to see Giama holding her, a smile on his face because he's no longer holding the weapon. The blessing is over, and let's just take a breath. He's finally back to his senses. Khlo nervously asks if he's okay, and he just calmly tells her he's fine and turns to leave, thanking her for the training session. After he's gone, Khlo heads back to her dorm. She's had this feeling for a while now, ever since the entrance exam. Giama's power isn't just strong, it's peculiar. When they fought, she could tell it wasn't skill he was using, but pure, raw instinct. Even with his divine blessing activated subconsciously, she was completely outmatched. With nothing but that broken wooden sword, he managed to totally overpower her. As she's walking through campus, someone steps out from the shadows, commenting that Khlo looks surprisingly happy. And who do we have here? This mysterious newcomer is Nox Aditor, Khlo's older brother. Nox starts mocking her for hanging out with a nobody after joining the academy. Chloe knows who he's talking about and warns him not to speak about her friend that way. Knox didn't even know his name until now. But he warns Chloe that she should stop hanging around him, or else the Aviator family will simply erase him. Khlo just turns and walks away, telling Knox that even if the editors came, they would be no match for Giama. As she leaves, Knox is left wondering about this kid who has changed his sister so completely. Speaking of Giama, as he walks home, he starts thinking about that strange blessing, the power he has. What he's been given is a far cry from a blessing. Let's be real, you and I know this isn't a gift. It's more like a curse. To avoid relying on the sword god's power, he desperately tried to find new weapons. And yet that power chased him down, even taking control of his body, almost mocking his struggle to break free from it. When he fought Khlo, he didn't feel any pain. Instead, all he felt was pleasure, like he was completely intoxicated. Just like a curse, the blessing toyed with him like a puppet, whispering sweet nothings into his ear, telling him to slash, to cut, to destroy. Because of that, he surrendered his body. Right until Khlo's screams dragged him back from the brink. It was her voice that made him remember his own name and snapped him back to reality. Thanks to her, he regained his senses just long enough to hurl the wooden sword away, feeling like he'd lose himself forever if he didn't get rid of it that very second. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? The Yandir who nearly killed him just moments ago is the very girl who managed to pull him back from the edge. He was furious that she broke his sword in the first place, but now all he felt was a deep, deep sense of gratitude. That's why he didn't make a scene when he came to his senses. He was terrified of that sword god's blessing activating again, but what happened today proves that he can't just ignore this problem forever. This so-called gift is something he's stuck with for the rest of his life. And it's the very reason his wish to live a normal life will probably never, ever come true. As he practically crawls his way back to his room, Giama realizes something is inside him, something that's trying to devour his very sanity. This definitely isn't a blessing. It's a curse trying to consume him whole. 3 days later, classes are going on as usual. Khlo's chatting with new friends, but pay attention here, something is clearly wrong. Since that duel, Giama hasn't been to class. And they never exchanged contact info, so she has no way of checking up on him. Every time she went to his dorm, the only response she got to her knocks were pained, agonized groans. She thought about just breaking the door down, but she was afraid he would end up hating her for it. She likes watching him from her seat during class, and she's lost count of how many times she would sneak a glance his way during the day. At first, she thought she was drawn to him because he risked his life for her, but let's be honest, that's just an excuse at this point. Whatever the reason she's drawn to him, the fact is, she misses him. The next day, Giama still hasn't shown up by the time the teacher is yelling at everyone to settle down. It's raining today. So the teacher announces they'll be having a study hall instead of training. As the students start finding their seats, he also notices that Giama has been gone for several days. But knowing him, there has to be a good reason for it. So the instructor decides to just wait patiently for Giama to come back on his own. As he's telling his students off, the classroom doors creak open, and Giama calmly walks in with a completely new look. Khlo jumps out of her seat, absolutely shocked, as Giama apologizes to the instructor for being late. His eyes are sunken, looking almost dead, and a strand of hair on his head has turned stark white. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Even the instructor is stunned by Giama's new look, just like every single person in that room. He nervously gestures for Giama to sit, as the other students start to whisper. Giama looks different, sharper, even handsome. After class, the others head out. But Khlo stays behind, finally walking up to Giama. It's the first time she's seen him in 4 days, and she asks what happened. Why was he gone so long? He just stays quiet for a moment before answering. He tells her he just felt a little sick and that she shouldn't worry about him. But from her shaky voice, he knows she doesn't believe a word of it. Still, what else can he say? The last 3 days were absolute hell. He went through something like extreme withdrawal, pushing him to the brink. Mentally exhausted, he couldn't leave his room or even eat a single thing. He just buried himself in bed, praying the convulsions would finally stop. And the pain this time around was so much worse than anything he'd felt before. This was the price he paid for using that broken weapon, and it gets worse. When he looked in the mirror, his face was the same, but his expression was hollow. Sunken, empty, and his hair looked like it was starting to turn white. This was all clearly a penalty from the sword god. Khlo just looks guilty. The last place she saw him was the training grounds, so she must be thinking that all of this is somehow her fault. To calm her down, he changes the subject. He asks if she's still interested in getting that dinner she wanted before. Her reaction is pure shock, even more than when he walked back into class. It was the right call because a huge smile just lit up her entire face. She asks him what he'd like to eat, and the first thing on his mind is fish. But as they're talking, a strange sensation suddenly runs right through him. He turns and sees someone staring at them from the end of the hall. Now watch this. It's Khlo's brother, Nox, and the entire atmosphere immediately turns ice cold. Giama walks right over to confront him, telling him to stop staring from the shadows. If he wants to talk, he should just come inside, but Giama spots something off. Something is wrong with the guy's eyes. Khlo rushes to get between them. She's trying to stop a fight before it starts, but her voice is shaking. You can see her hesitation, but she's still trying her best to protect him. Nox asks Khlo if this is really the guy she's breaking Adaro's rules for. Khlo snaps back that she wants nothing to do with her family, but her brother. Reminds her she can't just wash the blood from her hands once you're born. As an auditor, you die an auditor. Khlo is talking like she's some kind of rebel. And her brother, he's talking like he's from a historical drama. It's ridiculous. Giama is just getting annoyed. Nox keeps insulting him, pushing and pushing. And that's what finally causes Khlo to snap. She screams at Nox to stop. Stop talking about the man she loves. You and I can see her fury even shocks him. Giama had hoped for just one quiet day, but he's starting to get used to this. These disruptions are becoming his new normal, but the more important thing here. The auditors, he knows all about them, a group that works entirely in the shadows. They specialize in assassination, and in the game, they show up later on. They're said to be weaker than the other great houses, but that's a lie. When it comes to the art of assassination, they are completely unrivaled. Every single member of the Auditor clan is ridiculously powerful thanks to their training. A brutal regimen they've all endured since childhood, molding them into top-tier assassination tools. For Khlo to come from a family like this, it means her cute and bubbly personality is a massive red flag. You and I can see she's the odd one out. Unlike his sister, Nox has a look that screams he's used to killing. And while Giama has no problem with that, it's pretty clear Khlo just wants to live a normal life. Just like his sword god blessing, Khlo had no choice in being born into the auditory family. She's fated to become a cold-blooded, emotionless killer, which is a pretty grim future to think about. Giama doesn't see himself as a hero, and he has zero intention of ever becoming one, but here's the thing. Even if he can't save the world, maybe he can save one single girl. He steps between Khlo and her brother, confronting Nox face to face. He tried to run from the sword god's blessing, but it was no use. So instead, he's taking a step forward and embracing this curse. After all, his name means sword demon. With that, he walks right past the assassin siblings and tells Nox to follow him. Meanwhile, Lee Wanbin is in his office, his thoughts completely consumed by his student. When Giama came to class this morning, it was painfully obvious something had happened to him. His face was a void. No emotion, just deeply troubled. As he's thinking, one of his fellow instructors walks in, all cheerful, and makes a crack about the man's bald head. Before they can talk more, Li Wan Bin gets a call. It's the administration. They want his permission for one of his students to use the subspace. Li Wan Bin immediately demands to know which of his cadets would make such a sudden request, and they confirm it. It's Kang Giama, and he wants to face Nox of the auditory. The stage is set. Giama and Nox's fight is on, and our main character waits patiently with 15 minutes left on the clock. He expected getting access to the subspace would be a nightmare, but it was surprisingly fast. He definitely has media to thank for that, since she at least wanted him to be safe fighting a pro. Now, since this isn't a real-world fight, he won't be getting any physical injuries. But there's still a very good chance he could suffer some serious mental damage. But honestly, none of that matters. As long as he wins, he can hear the roar from the arena, even from the waiting room. And it looks like this showdown has drawn a massive, unexpected crowd. It's ironic, really. He tried so hard not to stand out before, but right now, that all feels completely pointless. Beside him, Chloe is just drowning in a sea of grief and guilt. She's blaming herself for this entire mess. Giama tries to reassure her that none of this is her fault. Plus, she even lent him some gear, so it's all gonna work out. But she tells him Nox is on another level. A genius with talent unmatched in the entire history of the auditory family. When it comes to the dark arts, there's no one who can touch him. And get this, at just 14, he was already named the pinnacle of the dark arts. Yeah, I know, cringy name. But you and I both know it proves just how powerful he really is. Giama stares down at the rose-colored blade in his hand, thinking about every choice that led him here. His old teacher always told him he was destined to wield a blade his entire life. Little did he know he'd still be stuck running around with a sashimi knife even in his next life. An announcement suddenly echoes. Through the speakers, the subspace battle is about to begin. He gets up from the locker room, but not before telling KHLO one last time that he's absolutely going to win this. Stepping out into the arena, he's hit by a massive wave of cheers from his fellow students. Giama feels like a gladiator in ancient Rome with how electric the atmosphere is right now. And off in the distance, he spots them. The entire star class is here, including all the main characters from the game. Nox then makes his entrance, his eyes locking onto Giama. The assassin looks insulted that someone would dare challenge him with, of all things, a flimsy little kitchen knife. His killing intent is absolutely no joke, so the smart thing to do would be to avoid provoking him at all costs. So naturally, Giama taunts him even more, saying a true master never blames his tools. Nox unsheathes his blade, an S-rank sword called the Two Hungarian Blades. And on top of that legendary weapon, he's also got one of the best auras in the game, the Blessing of the Crow. But hey, Giama came prepared too, with his dual discount-grade kitchen knives. You and I both know this is gonna be a fight for the history books. The subspace barrier goes up, and before it even fully forms, the two fighters lunge at each other. Giama activates the painless blessing as he reveals his two knives, which also activates the sword god's blessing. The crowd watches in stunned silence, barely able to see a single thing happening in the arena down below. This was supposed to be a total beatdown. An easy match where a special admission student gets crushed by a pro assassin, but now they're moving so fast the students can't even begin to track what's going on. Even the students from the star class are shocked at how intense this fight has become. Especially Abel, who just can't believe the guy she wrote off as weak has this kind of fighting power. Their blades continue to clash, with Giama effortlessly dodging every single one of Nox's attacks. The assassin's frustration boils over, and he launches an attack so fast it creates 3 afterimages of himself. But somehow, even though the attacks hit Giama head-on, he comes out without a single scratch. Now the audience watching is hyping up Nox's power and speed, seeing this as Giama just running scared from every attack. But Abel knows what's really happening. Only those who can truly see the fight understand the truth. Giama is perfectly, almost casually, dodging every last one of Nox's attacks. Like he's not even trying. Meanwhile, Nox is just getting more and more furious. He even unleashed his blessing of the crow, thinking that would be enough to completely wipe him out. But Giama dodged it all like it was nothing. Now that Nox sees just how skilled this guy is, he decides to get serious. Aiming for a single, massive strike that can slice through a huge area in one shot. Giama suddenly drops the sashimi knife he'd been using and holds up the rosy blade that Khlo gave him. And trust me, just look at the confidence in that stance. It's enough to make Nox absolutely lose his mind. And you think Gamma is just going to take that, think again. As he charges his attack, Nox launches his own powerful strike, aimed right at our main character. But before he can even move, Gamma explodes into action, and in a flash, the match is over. All Gamma ever really wanted was a comfortable life. To get it, he stuck to the rules and tried his best not to stand out. But now, he's given his body to the sword god with one single purpose. To cut Nox so cleanly, the guy wouldn't even realize he'd been sliced. The entire crowd goes dead silent as Nox's arm, still clutching his blade, flies through the air and lands limply on the ground. This is the true origin story of Kang Giama, and it's the moment he says goodbye to his peaceful future. Giama turns and finishes the job, slicing Nox into pieces and bringing the battle to a decisive end. The subspace barrier drops, and the crowd is still locked in a stunned silence as Nox tries to get his breath back, hands planted on the floor. Gamma casually puts his blade away. The announcer declares him the winner. Gamma isn't surprised the crowd is speechless. He just unleashed unbelievable power out of absolutely nowhere, and all with a simple knife made for gutting fish. Despite that incredible strength, he still thinks that cutting a person is just a deeply unpleasant act. The only good thing is that the Mao brothers and Nox were just projections inside the subspace, so he wasn't actually killing real people. Nox is still gasping for air, and Gamma can't help but admire the man's tenacity. He's every bit as strong as Klo said, with an incredible battle sense that was clearly sharpened through brutal experience. The only problem: you could see his every move coming from that intense killing intent. The announcer repeats it. Giama is the winner, and that seems to be enough to snap everyone out of their daze. The arena just explodes with cheers and shock. A first-year special admission student just took down a sophomore. Gamma's peaceful, simple life is officially over, but this is the path that he chose for himself. Now that it's come to this, all he can do is endure. Even by the next day, the duel between the first and second year is all anyone is talking about. Now let's switch scenes, because someone else can't stop thinking about that fight. The student who has completely taken over her thoughts recently. Because of that duel, his name now follows her everywhere. It's almost as if he's the only one that anyone is talking about. When she saw it, she couldn't believe it herself. At that moment, he displayed unbelievable swordsmanship, using only 2 kitchen knives. Watching his total mastery of the blade made her feel almost foolish for ever thinking she was skilled with a sword. In fact, he was so good she's positive he was the top student her grandfather was keeping a secret from her. And that just makes her even more frustrated, since she talked to him as if he was weak when he was so much stronger. Her annoyed sigh is loud enough to wake her seat partner, Rachel. She apologizes, but Rachel knows immediately that something is seriously bothering her friend. Abel tries to brush it off, saying she's just frustrated because she hasn't been able to get a workout in lately, but Rachel can see right through that. She starts making a few guesses, trying to figure out what's up. Abel's friend jokes that it might be boy trouble, and she absolutely nails it. The idea that Lady Abel would be into romance makes Rachel just burst out laughing. All the while, Abel is desperately trying to convince her that it's not what it looks like. But Rachel isn't buying it for a second. She's completely ignoring her. Instead, she's trying to figure out which guy has her best friend this flustered. She runs down the list of options, starting with Leon, the handsome class star. But Abel's totally deadpan reaction at the mention of his name is a dead giveaway. So that leaves just one possibility, the special student from yesterday's duel. The one who shocked the entire academy with his insane power. And again, Abel freezes up, unable to deny it. That's all the confirmation Rachel needs. Immediately, she grabs Abel's hand and starts pulling her toward the tiger class. She's going to meet the boy that has been on absolutely everyone's mind. The two of them barge right in, with Abel reluctantly getting dragged along. Now watch this, the entire class just freezes, stunned that the two school beauties are here. Rachel hops onto a desk to get a better view. Someone immediately tries to scold her for jumping on another student's seat. But she just flashes a pretty smile and completely short-circuits his brain. Abel can only hang her head in shame at her friend's crazy antics. Finally, Rachel spots Giama, fast asleep at his desk while Chloe fawns over him. At first, Rachel thinks Chloe must be his girlfriend, but honestly, she doesn't care. If anything, that just makes this whole situation way more fun for her. She walks right up to Giama and playfully blows into his ear, shocking both Abel and Chloe. As he slowly starts to wake up, she sits on his desk with a flirty look, asking for his name. Giama already knows exactly who she is, and he is not thrilled to see another game heroine. Especially not popping up in front of him, out of nowhere like this. She leans in closer, poking him on the cheek and complimenting how handsome he is. He just stares back, completely stunned. He has no clue what is happening. But every instinct in his body is screaming that this situation is extremely dangerous. Suddenly, the hand Rachel was using to poke Giama is caught by a very angry-looking Chloe. Chloe demands to know what Rachel thinks she's doing, but her fury just seems to amuse Rachel. Looks like Giama's danger sense wasn't warning him about Rachel, it was about Chloe. Her entire personality flips on a dime. Okay, you and I just unlocked the Yandir route. She literally summons a box cutter from what looks like a Yandir pocket dimension. If a knife fight breaks out in the middle of class, it could cause serious problems for him later. This is a combination of characters he never saw happen in the original game. He can only wonder why this is all going down right now. Abel rushes in, trying to drag her friend away from the ticking time bomb. I mean, this isn't even their classroom, but Rachel absolutely refuses to move. She just smirks, claiming she's only here to say a quick hello. Then, to pour gasoline on the fire, she pats Chloe's head like a child and tells her not to interrupt while the adults are talking. That pushes Chloe over the edge. She flicks open the box cutter and gets ready to strike. Giama and Abel watch in horror as Chloe lunges, but Rachel easily catches her wrist. At this point, she's just provoking Chloe on purpose, and Abel screams at her to cut it out. She begs her to stop before something truly terrible happens, and trust me, it feels like it's about to. He scowls, tossing Chloe away like she's nothing, but she lands perfectly on her feet. All right, you and I are about to witness some classic high school drama, Manhwa style. All the guys are hyped for the catfight, but Giama just looks annoyed by the whole thing. Then Rachel activates her blessing, a power from the very foundation of her clan. The clan of the Spear Saint, and in her family they have one core belief. They believe skills are absolutely useless when you're facing overwhelming strength. Now pay attention, because their motto is that brute force triumphs over all else. And that's the exact same code Rachel Diora, niece of the Spear Saint, lives by. She bluntly asks Giama if Chloe is his girlfriend, and our main character doesn't even hesitate. A simple no, and suddenly all of Chloe's aggression shifts right to him. He clarifies she's just a friend, which only seems to make Rachel even more intrigued. Meanwhile, Giama is still just trying to figure out what in the world is going on. Now that he's actually awake and has a moment to look around, he sees her. He finally notices Abel, who looks just as bewildered as he was a minute ago. He cuts straight to the point, tired of the drama already. He asks why the two of them even came here looking for him in the first place. And Rachel says it's because Abel was interested in him and wanted to see his face. Abel yells back that it's not true and that Rachel practically dragged her there. Rachel just thought Abel was genuinely interested in the guy, so she was helping. Since she followed her all the way to the tiger class, the whole class's attention turns. She shyly tries to explain that it was all just a misunderstanding, but now Gama's done. He just wants them to leave. He says it bluntly, shocking both of the girls. Rachel can barely hold back her laughter. This is getting interesting for her. You see, she's even more interested in Gama now. She likes a guy with guts. So she invites him to her dorm room after class to do some unholy things. And that is the absolute last straw for Chloe. She explodes. She screams for Rachel to get away from her Gama right this second. Rachel just mocks her. But Abel has had enough. Even she can't hide her anger at Rachel's constant flirting. Sensing things might be going too far, Rachel finally decides to back off. But not before telling Gama she'll see him later, an offer he instantly rejects. Don't come back, he says, as the two girls finally exit the classroom. Gama immediately goes back to sleep, while Khlo rushes over to check on him. And in that moment, no one notices Abel pausing to stare at Gama before walking away. Abel and Rachel continue their walk back, and Rachel can't stop thinking. She was seriously impressed by Gama's entire attitude. It wasn't just that he was cold. Looking into his hollow eyes, Rachel felt a strange, underlying feeling. A subtle warning that she could get her throat slit if she kept poking him like that. She was only curious about him, but he went far beyond her wildest expectations. He actually gave her chills, a real thrill, from what little she could see of him. She can already tell he's on a completely different level from the other students. Not like those all-style, no-substance guys crawling all over the star class. Her clan doesn't mess around when it comes to finding mates for its warriors. And that's when we realize she sees him as a precious resource she refuses to let go. Rachel suddenly turns around and apologizes to Abel for the whole ordeal. Abel, on the other hand, feels like she should be apologizing to the Tiger class students for the scene she created, but that wasn't Rachel's point. She's apologizing about Kang Giama because from now on, she's not holding back. She wants him. Elsewhere in the school clinic, Nox storms angrily through the halls with one single thought on his mind: kill Giama. Trust me, you're about to see some serious rage. He's lived his whole life undefeated, always praised as the auditory genius. And now, someone just beat him using nothing but a couple of kitchen knives. Just thinking about Gama's face sends his anger into overdrive. If he has to, he'll summon the full power of his clan just to take Gama's head. And once our main character is dead, he'll get Chloe back. Chloe has the potential to be as great as him, maybe even greater. He refuses to let some random special admission nobody take her from him. All he needs to do is call his clan and they'll strike. At least that's what he thought would happen. But the same Gama he's been plotting to destroy is sitting calmly in his clinic room, just eating an apple. Before all this, back when class was in session, Gama watched Chloe with concern. The other two girls left. But Chloe is still visibly shaken, even though she was the one who pulled a blade out first. While she's lost in her own dark thoughts, Gama walks over to calm her down. He's pretty sure he can talk her down from whatever mental edge she's on. But he really wishes she'd put that box cutter away while they talk. He asks her how Nox is doing, and she sadly reports that her brother is in the academy's medical ward. But that's weird. People can't get physically injured in the subspace, so he shouldn't need any medical care. Last Chloe heard, he was admitted to the ward despite having 0 injuries. But she says it's probably fine and tells Gama not to worry. Gama can't shake the feeling that something is wrong, though. Even after being sliced up in the subspace, Nox isn't the type to be so weak he'd be traumatized by it. Something else is going on. Now pay attention, because to figure this out, he decides to check on Nox himself. to sweeten the deal and get the room number. He pats her head, another trick he picked up from the How to Handle Yandir series, and that's how we end up here. Gama stares down a very surprised Nox, who can't believe our MC is in his room. Gama casually comments on the room, saying the auditoress must be rolling in cash to afford a hospital room this fancy for just one person. Before Nox can even ask how he got in, our main character picks up a skinning knife. It's sitting on the bedside counter, and Nox immediately goes on high alert, thinking Gama's here to finish the job. But I know what you're thinking, and you're about to be surprised. Instead, Gama just grabs another apple and cleanly peels the skin off before putting it right back on the table. Then, he gets up and walks past Nox, telling him he should eat more fruits and veggies for his health. This condescending advice pushes Nox over the edge. He reveals a hidden knife, ready to stab Gama in the back when he least expects it. But as if reading his mind, Gama warns him without even turning around. If he ever even thinks about revenge, he'll be cut down along with his entire clan. With that, Gama slams the door shut, and the force is so intense it slices the apple. An apple cleanly peeled and sliced, revealing he did it so fast Nox didn't even notice. Gama walks out of the med bay. His mission hopefully a success. Now, Nox is nothing more than a candle that can be snuffed out at any time. And you and I just watched his will get completely shattered. All thanks to Gama's bluff, a power move he really hopes doesn't come back to bite him. After all, the Adatories are an insane group of assassins. There's no way he can fight an entire clan with just 30 seconds of his pain neutralizer. Sure, he could probably take out 10 people in 30 seconds, but the rest of the clan. That's a whole different story. And that's just the worst-case scenario. Anyway, Gama would much rather avoid killing if he can help it. Walking under the moonlight back to his dorm, he feels like he's in the eye of the storm. In a weird way, he's starting to get used to this crazy new life of his. As long as Nox doesn't cause any more trouble, he shouldn't have to worry about things getting too out of hand. But he's got another problem on his plate, the one girl he wanted to avoid the most, Rachel. In the original game, she always approaches the main character first and gets attached to the main heroine, Abel. Now she's decided to approach him instead, and this is a major sign for us that the timeline is officially broken. He also needs to prep for midterms, and for once, he's gotta take this seriously to snag that sweet reward. The test requires a team of 5 students to take down a demonic monster. The 5 students will be picked from any class, and the whole point of this test is to emphasize teamwork. Individual skill is definitely key, but having faith in your teammates is what really matters on the battlefield. The smartest thing a weaker student can do here is find the right partners and hope they get carried. Not that the monsters themselves are a huge problem anyway. The creatures they'll be hunting for this test are dank demonic mermen. Gama remembers they looked absolutely disgusting in the game, which means seeing them in real life is going to be even nastier. I mean, if they were mermaids. At least they'd be nice to look at. But mermen are just gonna be gross. But then again, mermaids are considered demonic humans, and they're the main fighting force of the demon army, which means they are way more powerful. Compared to demonic humans, demonic monsters are basically nothing more than guard dogs or pets. Luckily, only mermen should be on the island, meaning the students won't have to face any demonic humans. It's already been a month since Gama came to this school, and this is the first night he's actually felt a little peace. It's been 700 years since humans and demons agreed to a truce. And just like human history is filled with war, there have been a few clashes between the two sides, both big and small. For example, about half a century ago, Vasman, the commander of the 6th Legion, claimed he would revive the commander of the 1st Legion. That insane declaration led to a full week of fighting that bathed the city in blood. In the end, humanity won, and the 7 heroes were born from that battle, but from those heroes, 3 were lost. And neither side wanted to push things any further. Other than that, peace has lasted, but Gama can't help but wonder, and so do we. Is this what peace really feels like? The more he thinks, the more he realizes whoever sealed the first Legion commander, alone 700 years ago, must have been an absolute monster. The sixth commander took a whole team of 7 just to bring down. And even then, people in their group died, and now they only have 3 years before the Second Great War between humans and demons begins. This time with the Demon King himself. It's a terrifying thought, but just thinking about it won't change anything. What Gama needs to do right now is focus on the upcoming midterms. The first step is to find teammates. But that's easier said than done when you don't have a single friend. Right now, though, he's the Academy's most famous student. And maybe, just maybe, he can use that reputation to his advantage and finally solve this problem. There's no way he can hide for 3 more years, not anymore. So Gama decides to switch up his entire life motto. You and I are about to see a change. He's done living quietly. From now on, he's going to live comfortably. Now he just needs to do his best to get people to join his team, but 1 week later, he's still completely alone. Not a single person has invited him to join their group. In the end, it seems like everyone is just too scared of him. He turns around and looks at his class, and the only other person sitting alone is K.H. Low. Maybe she's been an outcast ever since that showdown with her brother, the one he brutally lost. Or maybe it was because of how she acted when Rachel showed up. Whatever the reason, he walks over to her and asks if she's still looking for cadets to team up with. Just like him, she's still totally alone, and Gama's actually worried about her. After all, he's used to being a loner, but she actually had a few friends. At least she did, and now they're all gone. She just tells him she'll be fine as long as she has him. So he makes it official, offering to partner up with her so they can find 3 other people together. With K.H. Low's skills, she'll be a massive asset to him. He can only fight for 30 seconds, making her worth about 30 soldiers all by herself. But just then, wait for it, the classroom piece is shattered as Rachel comes charging in, yelling for Gama. He doesn't even bother hiding his annoyance at seeing her. And K.H. Low, she doesn't hide her killer instinct either, pulling out a box cutter. Rachel keeps bothering him, even flopping dramatically onto his desk. And then she asks him if he has found a group to take the test with yet. Since she's clearly not getting the hint, he just answers her. The fact that he doesn't have a team is perfect for her, so she invites him to join her group. Gama is immediately suspicious of the offer. There's got to be a huge line of students dying to join her team, so why would she specifically come after him? She tells him straight up, he just seems more fun to take the test with than anyone else in her class. Gama tells her he's already teamed up with K.H. Low, but that's fine too, because Rachel's group has 2 spots left. Perfect. Gama is still suspicious of all this, since it's a way bigger risk for Rachel. Doing something like this could absolutely destroy her grades if they mess up on the island test. He glances at K.H. Low, who gives a reluctant nod, agreeing to join. With nothing holding him back, he tells Rachel he'll join her group. She immediately pulls out her phone to text someone, telling him he can't back out now. Then Gama asks who the other members of their group are, and the very first person she mentions is Leon, and trust me, we both know exactly which Leon. Alright, let's dive right in. This is the story's counterfeit protagonist, the one person Gama wants to avoid at all costs. He seriously has to wonder what crimes he committed in a past life to be cursed with such terrible luck. I mean, sure. He spent 30 years with a knife in his hand, but that was just for his job. Now he's getting tangled up with all the heroines for some reason. And even when he tries his best to fade into the background, the main plot keeps dragging him in. The heroines, at least, are a sight for sore eyes. So it's not the worst thing in the world to be involved with pretty girls. The real issue is Leon van Reinhardt. He's the actual main character, and getting involved with him will throw the entire plot into absolute chaos. Right now, Gama has zero idea how things will play out. But he's got this gut feeling that no matter what happens, it's gonna be his fault. He even tried to get into a different group. But Rachel already put his name down on the application without even asking him first. This is the first time in his entire life he's ever wanted to cut down a girl this badly. And then there's the other massive problem, the Yandir he shares a class with, and trust me, you do not want to ignore her. Speak of the devil, she slides up beside him, asking how he's doing, since he looks like he's seen a ghost ever since Rachel bounced. He just mumbles that he was a bit overwhelmed thinking about the exam with the star class cadets. But K.H. Lo tells him that no one in star class is stronger than he is, and he offers a weak thanks. He did choose to partner up with K.H. Lo, so he can't just ditch her now in good conscience. And honestly, thinking about it logically, there really isn't anyone better for him to take this test with. This could actually be a huge advantage if he wasn't so damn pessimistic about everything. He asks K.H. Lo when and where their first group meeting is supposed to be, and she tells him it's at a cafe right on campus. It's almost time anyway, so he suggests they just head over. They get there before anyone else, and both of them order drinks. K.H. Lo gets a delicious-looking avocado smoothie for herself. And Giama can only watch in pure envy. Thinking about how ridiculously expensive a single cup of that stuff is, he takes a sip of his own cheap espresso and nearly has a heart attack from how disgusting it tastes. Since this cafe is an outside business, the school faculty cards don't work. So for the first time, he is forced to use his own money. You and I have both felt that pain, right? As he's rethinking his life choices, his phone buzzes with a text from Rachel. She says she's here, and not long after, she walks in with Lion and another guy. For the very first time, Lion and Giama make eye contact, then Giama glances at the person beside him. His first impression, this guy has to be some kind of delinquent. Lion is the first one to introduce himself, holding out a hand to our main character. Giama takes it, and Lion immediately compliments him on the awesome battle he had in the subspace a few days ago. Just from the way he talks, Giama can tell he's the perfect mix of intelligent and classy. They all sit down, and Rachel suggests they do proper introductions, so this is it. Lion goes first, presenting himself as the group's leader and a student from Star Class. He somehow already ended up as the leader of their little squad. And he seems completely genuine when he says he's looking forward to working with them. The next one to introduce herself is Rachel, but come on, everyone there already knows her. All right, let's meet the new team our boy Giama has to deal with. First up, Speed Weapon. He's also a student from the Star Class, and his introduction is short and sweet. So short that Giama's more interested in his weird name. Next up is K.H. Lo. She introduces herself as a Wolf class student who got in all thanks to Giama. But Rachel immediately mocks her for calling Giama Giamkun instead of his real name. The two have an intense stare-down for a second before K.H. Lo just sighs and backs off. Finally, it's Giama's turn to introduce himself. And believe it or not, his introduction is even shorter and more blunt than Speed Weapon's. He just gives his name and his class, that's it. Everyone just awkwardly accepts the intro, and Leon pulls out a laptop to get down to business. He taps a key, and a holographic map projects into the air. This shows the region where they'll be taking their exam. The site is an island. It's called Scapulae Island, and they'll be teleported to a specific spot on it. But only the gate itself is a subspace portal. And here's the catch, once they're on that island, everything is for real. That means they can get seriously injured by the demonic beasts there. Their group is assigned to the northeastern coast, along with 2 other teams. Their mission to hunt mermen in that area. But there's a limited number of them available to hunt. So the goal is to hunt as many mermen as possible before the limit is reached. With the briefing done, Leon ends the presentation and asks if there are any questions. Speedwagon goes first, asking if there are any other risks besides the mermen. Apparently, the instructors already scouted the island to make sure no other monsters would be there. Then Khlo asks if it's okay for different groups to ambush each other. And yeah, you can see the absolute shock on her groupmates' faces. Leon calmly explains that the exam is strictly about hunting demonic beasts. Any conflict between the groups would mean instant disqualification. That kind of question just shows her assassin instincts are always on. With no more questions, Leon dismisses the group for the day. He tells them all to get prepared for the midterms before they meet up again tomorrow. The other cadets file out of the cafe, leaving Giama all alone with Leon. The silence is super awkward, and Giama starts to leave, but then he's stopped. Leon suddenly calls out his name, asking where he came from. Giama just freezes, trying to figure out what that strange question even means. He's heard it before, but coming from Leon, it feels completely different. You can see it in his eyes. Leon is dead serious about this question. Giama has no idea what he's trying to get at. He could have easily asked this during the introductions earlier. But no, Leon specifically waited until everyone else was gone. Noticing the long, tense silence, Leon apologizes for asking something so random. He says he couldn't help it because he feels like Giama is similar to him. Now it's true that Korean is the official language of this world, since the game was made there. But that doesn't mean other cultures and people don't exist. Anyone can tell just by looking at him that Giama is Korean. So for Leon to ask where he's from and say they're similar is strange. Struggling to wrap his head around this weird conversation. Leon tells him to act like he didn't hear a thing, then gets up to leave the cafe, but Giama stops him. And trust me, he throws the one question back that changes everything. Where are you from? It's pure reflex, and Giama instantly regrets it. But he knows he won't get any sleep tonight if he doesn't get an answer. Leon calmly takes Giama's hand and tells our main character that he's from Germany. Without another word, he leaves, and Giama can't help but wonder what is suddenly up with Leon. At the moment Leon first asked, Giama wondered if the main character of this game came from another world too. It's a wild thought, but it's also a very real possibility. There's no rule saying that only one person can be dragged into this video game. And possessing the main character is way more probable than possessing some random extra. Giama glances down at the knife on his table and gets an idea. When the blessing of the sword god activates, his senses are strangely heightened. Now, pay attention, maybe activating the blessing will give him some answers. He picks up the knife and removes the cover, and just as he hoped, a message floods his mind. It confirms that Leon is really from this world. This voice is similar to the one he heard fighting Khlo back when he first activated the blessing of the sword god. He can faintly hear a voice. However, thinking about it triggers a migraine that even bypasses his painless blessing. Regardless, the Leon he met today is definitely the Leon he played in the game. No actor could replicate that performance so perfectly. It's weird that Leon would ask which country he came from out of nowhere. And then the claim that the two of them are similar is also seriously concerning. He heads over to a wiki page, but there's zero information about Leon in this world. I mean, can you blame him? Things are getting weird, so Giama decides this is the last time he's getting involved with Leon. If something like this happens again, he can just go see media about it, while ignoring her attempts to run away with him. Giama is also surprised by how calm he's managed to be. Despite all the situations that have been unfolding recently, maybe this is also an effect of his blessings. He takes a look at his status screen, and as usual, it looks like he's making smooth progress. His mental fortitude and armament are the same, but his physical fortitude has increased thanks to all the training that he's been doing. His armament will also probably increase once he gets Murasame from the midterm exams. The only thing he's not sure of is the assimilation rate. It has gone up a lot, and it looks like it will soon unlock something special for him. Maybe it's related to what he's done so far. It's still annoying that he doesn't know what it is, and it's not like he can just ask someone else. At the bottom of the status screen, though, there's something new. His blessing of painlessness has increased by 10 seconds, meaning that he can now use his blessing for 40 seconds. It looks like after so much time, his efforts have finally borne fruit. As the days go by, the groups continue to meet up to discuss their battle strategy for the exam. And Giama continues to train and hone his skills until finally, the day you and I have been waiting for arrives. All the groups stand in front of the subspace gate, and Giama can tell that it has a completely different vibe than the training ground subspace. The rest of his team arrives as well, and the whole squad seems just as hyped. In their past meetings, they decided on the exact roles each person would take. Rachel is leading from the front as the main damage dealer, with Leon taking the center as their shot caller to hold the team together. Speed Weapon will be right behind Leon for support, while KHLO partners with Rachel as the secondary damage dealer. And finally, Giama will hold the rear guard, watching everyone's back, making for one solid team. He takes a second to admire their gear and just how powerful it is. Rachel's got an S-rank weapon called the Vermilion Phoenix Halberd. And even though Leon doesn't have his bowman yet, he's still packing a powerful sword. Lastly, Speed Weapon's gear is a recorder. Wait a second, are we about to get a battle theme song? Rachel assures him the recorder is one of the few S-rank items that can actually heal. And even Giama knows a healing S-rank armament is ridiculously hard to come by. That kind of equipment is a legendary find. So Giama gets closer to check it out, much to Speed Weapon's surprise. Their chat gets cut short when a voice blasts over the intercom. The first-year midterms are about to begin. The instructor for Wolf class, Lee Wanbin, comes over to talk to his students. They've all got a handle on the rules, so he keeps the pregame speech brief. He tells them flat out, don't be afraid to run if things get too crazy. No need to risk your life for a few extra points. You and I both know that's advice they're about to ignore. If they get injured or need to surrender, all they have to do is call for an instructor. Now that the exam is officially kicking off, Leewin tells them to do their best. He also tells them not to be nervous, but KHLO seems anxious, and Giama asks what's up. She tells him she can't stop thinking about the fact that mermaids can appear on this island. Giama reassures her again, saying the instructors already confirmed the entire area is clear. KHLO tries to take his word for it, but she can't shake the nerves. Back where she grew up in Sicily, mermaid sightings were common, and they were known for causing massive amounts of damage. Humans have a truce with demonic beings now, so they're rarely ever seen outside of dungeons. But the fact that these rumors have stuck around, even with the truce, means nobody really knows what makes a mermaid appear. He places a hand on her head to calm her down just as the teachers call for everyone to step through the gate. She smiles and decides to put her faith in Giama. Then much later, she hears Gama's voice calling to her through a thick haze in her mind. Looks like she lost focus for a moment, and now, trust me, things have gone completely sideways. When she opens her eyes, she sees Giama and the others standing before something massive and powerful. Rachel asks Speed Weapon if he's managed to contact an instructor, but they're deep in a cave and he has no signal. No connection at all. Meanwhile, someone is lying on the ground bleeding. They're in serious danger, and right in front of them is the cause of all this sudden chaos, a mermaid. So let's rewind and see exactly how they got into this mess. Because as soon as they arrived on Scopuli Island, things went wrong. The first major problem they faced was motion sickness from that portal. The only person who seems completely fine is Giama, who tells them he just doesn't get motion sick. Not long after that, they had their first encounter with a merman. It just stared at them in shock for a moment, before skittering off. And yeah, they're disgusting, but way smaller than Giama was expecting. Leon confirms it, this one's just a small fry, not worth any points. To find a real target, the team has to move to their assigned location. Alright, let's see how this team operates. Chloe pushes ahead to scout, while the rest of the group follows carefully behind. Eventually, they make it to the spot, and Chloe returns from her recon mission to report her findings. She points out a cave about 500 meters ahead and leads them straight to it. Before they even step inside the dark, ominous-looking entrance, they notice something. Dozens of eyes are already staring back. Leon estimates there are about 50 to 60 mermen inside, all huddled around a campfire, taking them all down. Would absolutely guarantee them first place in the midterms. But you and I both know this is a huge risk. Their safety has to come first. Heading into that cave means no signal, cutting off any contact with an instructor. It's a classic high-risk, high-reward choice. And the final call falls to their leader, Lion. Before this mission, he was meticulous, assigning every single member of the team their perfect role. So it's his turn to lead them to victory. Without hesitation, Lion makes the call and sends Rachel in to kick things off. She lunges back, unleashing a golden spear that streaks into the cave. It lands dead center on their campfire, extinguishing the flames and shocking every single merman. Before they can even react to where it came from, Rachel is already on them. And just like that, several merman heads are sent flying. Speed Weapon jumps in next, buffing Rachel's abilities, letting her pick them off even faster. Giama can't help but gasp, stunned by Rachel's sheer power. But that admiration doesn't go unnoticed by Lo. The Yandir draws her katana, activating her own blessing to join the fray. She immediately charges in, trying to catch up to Rachel's kill count. Slicing through merman after merman as they both rush deeper into the cave. They aren't slowing down, not even as they get closer and closer. Giama starts to sweat. It looks like they have no intention of stopping at all. They get within inches of a collision before finally pivoting, taking out the last merman rushing between them. Then, just as quickly, they separate and get back to work, taking out the others while Giama lets out a huge sigh of relief. Turns out he was worried about them for nothing. And eventually their combined strength is too much. All 60 mermen are wiped out. With the job done, Lion suggests they move on and continue the exam somewhere else. That decisive leadership and pure determination. That's what makes the blonde hero the true heart of this team. It just proves it to Giama. Lion is the real main character here. There's just no way anyone else could replicate these heroic qualities. But as Giama's thoughts wander, he glances away from Lion for just a second. He looks back up just in time to see the hero fall, a fatal blow to the stomach. Now don't blink. The rest of the team just stares in shock as something powerful rises from the pile of dead mermen behind Giama. It's a demonoid mermaid, the exact monster Lo was terrified would appear on this island. And Giama knew it. Things were going way too smoothly for them. Now the real question is, all right, let's watch them figure this out. Do they run or do they stand and fight? Getting to safety is one thing, but with an injured Lion, near impossible. Rachel tells Speed Weapon to call the instructors and let them know a mermaid has appeared. But just as Giama feared, the cave is messing with their signal. No internet access means no way to contact anyone, and everyone is starting to panic. Well, almost everyone. In the middle of all the chaos, Giama is completely calm. With Lion down, only one person is left who can possibly take the lead here. So he steps up, immediately giving clear orders to his panicked teammates. First, he tells Rachel to keep the mermen away from them, no matter the cost. Then he orders Speed Weapon to pour every last healing blessing into Lion. Finally, he snaps Lo out of her trance, telling her to evacuate the other cadets. She needs to get them out of here and tell the instructors what's going on. The words take a moment to sink in, but she quickly turns and runs to do it. Now that everyone has their orders, Giama steps forward to face the mermaid. And watch this, he walks right towards it, to the absolute shock of the others. He tells them that the smaller mermen are their problem to deal with. As for the mermaid itself, turns out slicing up big fish is his specialty. See, demons have a unique power called magic, similar to a human's blessing. It's a power so strong, it took down the original protagonist in just one hit. That's the insane power gap between humans and demons. Now Gama has the blessing of the sword god, but that's no guarantee he will survive this. Even in the original game, taking on a magic-using demon without a party was impossible. And yet here he is, getting ready to solo a boss designed for a full-scale raid. In other words, our boy Gama is in some seriously deep trouble. But there's no way he can back down now. Chloe needs about 10 minutes to find help. Now get this, because Gama only has 40 seconds to take this monster down. If he fails, he'll meet a fate much worse than the game's main character. Rachel struggles to hold the merman back, while Speed Weapon pours everything he has into healing Lion. The wound is deep, but it's recovering bit by bit. Despite the overwhelming task in front of him, he can't help but stare at Gama. Just looking at that mermaid is enough to make Speed Weapon's bones shiver. And yet Gama is planning to fight it all by himself. The demon attacks first. It launches that same laser beam that took Lion out of the fight. Gama dodges the attack and rushes in with his knife, closing the distance. It looks like it primarily uses long-distance water magic. Gama doesn't know much about magic, but he knows this demon is just a fish. A fish with flesh and bones. All he has to do is get in close and cut it down. He jumps toward the demon and slices. But the creature dodges his attack and immediately heads for Speed Weapon instead. Gama has to react fast. He comes around and manages to slice off one of the monster's fins, making it scream. The cut was way too shallow though, and our hero goes in for another attack. But it quickly dodges and dissolves into water. You can see how tricky this fight will be. By going after Speed Weapon, it's pretty clear it's targeting the weaker members. Lion is looking much better now, and Speed Weapon calls out to Gama. He signals that he's alright, so Gama takes a quick moment to check on him. Before charging back to fight the mermaid, and in Speed Weapon's eyes, Gama is looking ridiculously cool right now. During one of their talks, Speed Weapon mentioned how he's always looked up to heroes who sacrifice themselves for others. But ever since he came to this school, he hasn't found anyone who truly fits that description. That's why he joined Rachel's group, hoping to find the hero he was searching for in Lion. He even told Gama straight up that he was far from a hero in his eyes, and yet, in this insane situation, the one stepping up and putting his life on the line is Gama himself. The mermaid unleashes another attack, firing fish-shaped magic blasts that Gama expertly dodges. But this time, instead of just flying past him, they turn around and lock on. Now pay attention here. The mermaid can control these things, and now they're chasing Gama around the cave. With Gama distracted, the demon makes another move on Speed Weapon. But Gama gets there just in time, slicing the monster before it can attack. But it's another shallow cut. He can't take this thing down with nicks and scrapes. To kill this demon for good, Gama needs to land one deep, decisive stab. The mermaid fires another blast. But this time Gama dodges perfectly, letting the attack tear through the cave's ceiling and shoot into the sky. The blast is so massive that cadets all over the mountain can see it, followed by a deafening roar that echoes everywhere. And on top of that, it starts to rain. The instructor with another group orders them to get the wounded and move out before the downpour makes things worse. Back in the cave, the mermen are finally retreating, giving the cadets a moment to breathe. The mermaid was buried under the debris from the ceiling collapse. But Gama knows for a fact that she isn't dead. And just as he thinks it, she erupts from the rocks piled on top of her, rushing straight for the students. This whole time, Gama hasn't been able to fight seriously because he was worried about the injured Lion. Now that the mermen are gone, he tells Rachel to handle Speed Weapon and Lion for him. Speed Weapon is just stunned that Gama is really about to take on a demon all by himself, and you and I are thinking the same thing. He's witnessing something legendary right now. Meanwhile, Gama is just relieved. He can finally focus now that he doesn't have to worry about his teammates. He's only got 10 seconds of his pain-nullifying blessing left, and he has to make up for lost time if he wants to survive this. Gama and the mermaid lock eyes for a second, then charge in for the final clash. Elsewhere, Kh-Lo is tearing through the forest, desperately searching for help. She's exhausted, but she knows if she stops, everyone she left behind is in serious danger. Her body is screaming in pain, but the more she wants to quit, the more she thinks about Gama, who's back in that cave, fighting that monster alone for their sake. He really is the strongest person she's ever met. It's clear he hates fighting and avoids drawing his sword unless he absolutely has to. The only time he ever fights is when there is no other option. Since Gama made the best call by fighting the mermaid, she knows she has to do her best to bring back help. But that feeling of being too weak, trust me, that's what forges a hero. Thinking maybe, just maybe, she could have helped him, then a loud blast rips the side of the cave wide open. She knows that sound, it's Giama. He's fighting the mermaid. Lost in worry, she trips on a vine and nearly face plants. But she scrambles back up and keeps running. Stick with me, because she can't afford to stop now. Not until she finds somebody to help. As she keeps sprinting, she senses something. Something's up ahead. Her mind is a total mess. She can't get a clear look. But her first thought is Merman. She draws her sword to defend herself. And she unleashes a strike towards the closest one to her. But then, surprisingly, the figure blocks it with their own sword. That's because it isn't a merman. It's Abel, the moment she realizes she's finally found a friendly face. Kh-Lo's legs just give out, and she collapses right there on the ground. Abel's teammates are instantly suspicious, thinking this has to be some kind of ambush. But Kh-Lo weakly tries to tell them, to make them understand. They need to go, they need to help Giama. Luckily, Abel recognizes her. He remembers seeing her and Rachel in Gima's class, meanwhile, back in the cave. Speed Weapon is just staring, completely awestruck, and trust me, what he's seeing, it's on another level. He seriously wonders if a day as insane as this will ever happen again. The way Gama fights, it's like watching a master swordsman handle a live fish. At this point, this whole thing is way beyond just fighting a demonoid. Gama is completely, utterly overwhelming it. This scene unfolding right now is something that will be burned into his memory for the rest of his life. Even Rachel, the successor of the Spear clan who grew up around powerhouses, is speechless. She has clearly never seen skill on this caliber before, and yet she's the first to react, shoving him out of the way of a stray attack heading for them. Speed Weapon almost forgot where he was that lost in the fight. Gama's opponent is a demon that uses magic. A blade against magic isn't a good match. Even with our main character holding the upper hand, this is still dangerous. If that demon uses magic that he can't possibly counter, Gama is done for. And as soon as he has that thought, as if on cue, don't blink now, this changes everything. The mermaid raises its hands high and calls out a new attack, Needle Squall. The rain all around them starts to crystallize, freezing solid as everything halts. Then the mermaid drops its hand, and all those sharp, frozen raindrops fall directly on Giama. He dodges some and parries the rest, but they are too hard. They're too much for his knife. The blade starts to crack and break apart. But instead of dropping it, Gama hurls the shattered blade right at the mermaid. It cuts straight through the demon's side, leaving a gaping wound in its waist. Gama then follows up with a final slash, cutting through its flesh with one powerful move. Except the mermaid dodges, using the body of another merman to block the attack. It uses the opening to charge up a massive blast right in our hero's face. He's way too close. There is no possible way for him to dodge this attack. Just before the blast hits, as he starts to panic, his mind is suddenly teleported. He's in a clean, empty space, and he sees a single red line showing him where to cut. He hears a voice tell him that if he can slice that line, it will cut. You and I are about to witness the impossible. Instead of trying to dodge, Gama readjusts his grip and cuts right through the magic. The slice causes a massive shockwave to erupt outwards. When the smoke finally clears, Giama stands over the creature, completely victorious. He stares down at the lifeless body of the mermaid as it makes one last sound. Then he kicks it back into the dark pool it crawled out from. Rachel and Speed Weapon can only stare, their minds completely blown. I mean, think about it, a freshman just defeated Demonoid all by himself, but the victory costs him. Giama collapses, coughing up blood. Rachel is the first to move, rushing over to his side while Speed Weapon goes to Lion. Thankfully, the protagonist is okay, but then another sound echoes from behind them. Speed Weapon spins around, thinking the mermen that ran away have come back for more. But it's not them, it's Abel's team, and they're carrying an unconscious and injured KH-Lo. The first thing Abel's eyes lock onto isn't the dead monster, but Rachel instead. She's holding the unconscious Giama, and for some reason, that sight makes Abel's blood boil. She ignores it and scans the area. The rest of the team looks like they're half dead. Every one of them has one foot in the grave, and yet Lion seems perfectly fine. Abel tells them she's already contacted the academy, and help will arrive in an hour. Now that backup is on its way, she wants to know what in the world happened here. She turns to Speed Weapon for an explanation, but he's more frustrated with the academy. The instructors swore that they checked this entire island top to bottom. He doubts they'll believe him anyway, but he starts to tell them exactly what he saw. Speed Weapon gives Abel the short version of the insane events that just took place. He explains how Giama defeated the mermaid completely alone, and just as he expected, she can barely believe a word of it, the fairy tales her grandfather told her as a kid. Were more realistic than this story, but as ridiculous as it sounds. The evidence of the battle all around them proves that every word of it is true. So why lie? Still, Abel can't accept it, and pay attention because here's why. She's a descendant of the acclaimed hero Baylor Wowican and his disciple Aaron Nebelong. That's the legendary blood that flows in her veins, giving her a special attribute. Her entire bloodline has always been overflowing with promise and massive potential. And she has put in an incredible amount of effort to live up to her family name. And yet, even with everything she has going for her, with all her hard work, Kang Giama continues to prove that the gap between their skills is just ridiculously huge. Abel can't help but feel a bizarre mix of raw fear, dread, and admiration. She tells the healer in her own group to go and try to stabilize Gima's condition. They have to keep him alive until the teachers arrive. Getting a closer look now, she sees. He's completely torn apart and knocking on death's door, and yet this guy fought a demonoid alone and actually came out victorious. Abel can't help looking at him with envy. Speed Weapon snaps her out of it, telling her it would probably be a good idea if they don't give the instructors every single detail of what happened here. The academy claims they scouted the island, and yet a demonoid appeared from a cave. A cave that would be incredibly easy for any of the cadets to spot. Something about this entire story just doesn't add up. Leon cuts straight to the point. He asks Speed Weapon if he thinks there might be a mole from the demon factions. A spy inside the academy. Leon tries to backtrack, saying that's not exactly it. But the terrifying possibility is now hanging in the air between them all. It's undeniable, there's no way that the professional scouts could have missed this cave. And trust me, you and I both know what Speed Weapon said is true. Without Giama, everyone dies. Torn to shreds, now, there have been plenty of conflicts during the 700-year truce. But there was never a time when demons dared to touch academy cadets. There's a clause in the truce, you see, a very important one. If something like this happens, it's an automatic justification for war. Speed Weapon tries to pull them back to reality, assuring them they're overthinking things. Being cautious about a potential spy isn't a bad idea, he admits. But it's way too early to be jumping to those kinds of conclusions. For now, they just need to make sure their stories are perfectly aligned. If a spy really is in the academy, then Giama's about to become a massive target. Especially once people hear he defeated a demonoid completely on his own. Abel isn't a fan of keeping this whole thing quiet, not at all. But seeing how much Giama risked for them, and with everyone else in agreement, she suggests they at least speak with her grandfather before doing anything else. The cadets head back to the academy, and Giama is taken straight to the hospital. He wakes up to the sun on his face, almost surprised to find that he's still alive. The last thing he remembers is that mermaid firing off a magic sphere. It happened right as it died, an attack he had no way of dodging. But somehow he just barely managed to see it, a faint line. He swung his sashimi knife, cutting right through it, and the magic split in two before exploding. Looking back, that sphere was definitely water magic, but more than that. After activating the sword god's blessing, he felt something he just can't describe. Just to be sure, he summons his blessing, and the status window pops right up. His mental fortitude has increased by 1. That explains why he didn't panic. And it looks like his assimilation rate has gone up just enough. Okay, pay attention. He's unlocked the mysterious attribute. The next one unlocks when his assimilation rate hits 15%. He has a feeling this strange new power is what let him see that red line to cut. But as he's thinking, the door to his room flies open and a familiar figure rushes in. It's Media, and she doesn't waste a single second wrapping Giama in a bone-crushing hug. She's fussing over him as he struggles to breathe through her near-fatal affection. She finally pulls away and apologizes, but then reveals why she really came. Reaching into her purse, she opens up a dimensional pocket. Yes, in her purse. She pulls out his reward, the one thing he was hoping to get from the exam. The Murasame sword, a B-rank blade with some seriously high-level stats. This is exactly what Giama was looking for. He can only stare in total shock. Media just smiles and asks him if he likes it. She's sorry for giving it to him like this, since he should have received it officially. Meanwhile, a shadow lurks at the door, watching the entire exchange. Media calls out, telling the person to just come in instead of being a creep. So much for spying. It's the Sword Emperor Siegfried Nebulone. He clears his throat and sheepishly walks in to stand beside Media. And I know what you're thinking, because Giama gets a serious case of déjà vu. He bluntly asks what the Sword Emperor is even doing in his room. Media explains that his teammates told them exactly what happened out there. Then they both bow their heads low, apologizing on behalf of the entire academy. Entire academy, they're taking the blame for everything that went down during the midterms. Because of their screw-up, everyone there almost lost their lives. Giama is just speechless as she continues, swearing to him that they'll uncover the truth behind what happened. Stick with me, because this is where Siegfried speaks up, thanking him for saving all the cadets. Giama nervously scratches his cheek, telling them he just did what he could. Medea continues, saying that while his actions were incredible, they need to keep this whole incident quiet for now. She's sure the mastermind is still inside the academy, and they can't risk this story leaking out to the public. Giama gets it. He doesn't hold their decision against them. Medea just smiles, saying Giama sometimes acts like an old man stuck inside a teenage boy's body. The two administrators then leave the room, heading back to their main building. As they're walking through the halls, Medea asks her old friend if he remembers how they first met right after enrolling in the school. Siegfried was just lying on a bench, and she bluntly told him to move it. In response, Siegfried drew his sword without even saying a word. Siegfried plays dumb, pretending not to remember, and Medea gives a small smile. The whole thing feels like it happened just yesterday, but it's already been 60 years. And even after all that time, they haven't even filled a tenth of Wacken Academy's history. When they enrolled, the school was already ancient, overflowing with stories. There were big incidents and small ones, but the academy protected its cadets for 700 years. But suddenly the mood shifts, and Medea's aura shatters the windows around them. Before the midterms, she got reports that they'd completed multiple surveys of the island. Sure, it was rare, but Scopuli Island was known for mermaid sightings. So, she took every single precaution to make sure her precious students would be safe. And yet this still happened, right under her watch. Now I know what you're thinking, and yeah, Siegfried places a hand on her shoulder to calm her down, and she snaps out of it with an apology. Then she flips right back into fangirl mode, thinking about how amazing Giama is. The fact he took down a mermaid all by himself is just incredible, and she asks Siegfried what he thinks. Siegfried has seen natural-born talent countless times before. He's watched so-called chosen ones of their era eventually burn out and lose their spark. In families of heroes desperate for glory, the word genius gets thrown around way too easily. A kid shows the slightest bit of promise, and they're immediately called a genius just because of their family name. It's a word he wouldn't even let people use for his own granddaughter, Abel. But when it comes to Giama, whose talent is just so immense, maybe the word genius can only apply to him. If he keeps getting experience, Siegfried wonders just how far he could actually go. Maybe Kang Giama could even reach a place that Siegfried could only ever dream of. You and I know we're watching a true legend in the making. He walks past her without answering, just telling her to stay put at the academy. She smiles and follows him, and the two continue their chat as they walk the halls. Later, Giama is released from the all right, let's jump back in. Gama's out of the hospital and heading to class like nothing happened. Just as the headmaster instructed, the news about him taking down a demonoid on Scopuli Island. It's being kept completely under wraps. Gama figures his classmates can only be this carefree, because he was the one who stopped the mermaid. After being discharged from the hospital, the first thing he did was head to the school's forge to reshape and power up his blade Murasami. Right now, it's basically just a metal rod to him, despite having the sword god's blessing, so a reforge was absolutely necessary. He met with the blacksmith Volander, and now he can only pray the enhancement was a success. As he's thinking, he hears Khlo call his name. He turns to see her. She's slowly making her way towards him on crutches with her entire leg in a cast. But thanks to Speed's emergency treatment, the doctor said she should be able to walk without any help in less than a week. So despite her injuries, it looks like she's recovering fast. And even though Gama took down the mermaid by himself, he knows it was a team effort that got them all out of there alive. Khlo's rescue call, Rachel clearing out the merman, and Speed's healing and blessings all played a huge part. The only one who didn't do a thing was Leon. And it makes you wonder, right, is this guy really going to defeat the Demon King? He's supposed to be the hero, but with a fighting spirit like that, maybe it was just because he got hurt first. Their conversation gets cut short. Their instructor bursts into the classroom, ordering everyone to sit down and be quiet. He's got a few announcements before the training assembly begins. Once all the students are in their seats, he informs them they'll be getting a special co-instructor. The students aren't exactly thrilled by this sudden change of plans. That is, until they see exactly who's walking through the door. Siegfried himself calmly enters the classroom, leaving everyone completely stunned. Their own instructor bows to him with deep respect. Even Gama can't hide his shock. The strongest human in the world is standing right in his classroom. Meanwhile, elsewhere, an old man is thrown against a wall, then grabbed by the scruff of his neck. He's held up against the wall as a pink-haired woman slaps him hard across the face, sending him crashing to the floor. He apologizes to the woman he calls Instructor Kim. She's struggling to control her rage. This woman, who's mercilessly beating this old man, is the 5th Daemon Corps commander, and she is not happy. She demands to know why he didn't cooperate with her when he had the chance. The man tries to apologize again, but that just earns him another brutal smack to the face. It's pretty clear she's tired of his excuses. The entire point of their scheme was to bring Leon back from the exams. Half dead, he may be a hero candidate, but there's no way he could have taken on a mermaid all by himself. But now, Because of this old man's screw-up, Leon is back at the academy, perfectly safe. Instructor Kim lands another kick right to his face, but immediately regrets it when she sees she got some blood on her brand new shoes. She's still furious that a full-fledged demonoid was taken down by a bunch of first-year students. But considering the new recruits this year, she can't say she's all that surprised. The elder finally speaks up and clarifies that the mermaid was taken down by just one single cadet. And just when Instructor Kim assumes he's talking about Leon, here's the twist we've been waiting for. Let's jump in. Kang Giama, the academy's top student, just got spotted by the Demon Corps commander. She recognizes him as the special admission student, and that's all the info she needs. And just like that, she has fresh prey to hunt, but this new target isn't exactly an easy target. Meanwhile, for Wolf class, the daily grind continues. They're all out for their daily training. Well, everyone except for Chloe, that is. She's still recovering with a cast and crutches, and Giama can't help but feel jealous. Instead of resting, he's forced to run for his life alongside his classmates. And, to make it even worse, there's some old guy breathing down his neck after every lap. For his age, this dude is shockingly fast and nimble. Siegfried closes the distance. He pushes Giama to run faster, thinking he might still be hurt from the midterms. It's seriously weird to see the Sword Emperor himself running around with first years, let alone giving this much attention to a special admission student like Giama. Siegfried is the man who will one day inherit the legendary title of Sword Saint. He's destined to become one of the greatest forces for all of humanity. Not only that, during the Second Demon War, he's also supposed to become Leon's swordsmanship master. This is a character whose importance absolutely skyrockets in the latter half of the story. So why is someone this important training with the freaking wolf class? And here's where you and I can see the main story going completely off the rails. It's falling apart. Now that he thinks about it, Leon never did get the Sword Saint title. And that became a massive problem for him in his previous life. But still, Leon can't inherit the Sword Saint family title anyway, since he's not of the Neolong bloodline. So it doesn't really matter. That doesn't make this situation any less awkward though. Especially for Giama, who's catching jealous death glares from all his classmates. With Siegfried running this close, it almost looks like they're training together. Siegfried even uses the time to drop some wisdom on Giama, telling him that the foundation of any true warrior is built on their physical strength and endurance. No matter how talented or amazing someone is, all of that power is completely worthless if their body isn't strong enough to support it. With Giama fired up, he speeds ahead. He expects his student to keep up after the running is finally done. It's time for field training, and for this exercise, personal weapons are a no-go. Strictly prohibited. Instead, the students have to use one of the weapons provided by the academy and learn to master it. Siegfried dumps a pile of them. A whole variety of weapons hits the ground. Giama even spots a sashimi knife in the mix. The rest of the students are shocked by this sudden new condition from their teacher. One of them asks why it wouldn't be better to just use their family's prized weapons. That's because the basics are more important than anything else in the world. The more a person depends on a high-grade weapon to do the work for them, the more they'll start to neglect their own training, and it gets worse. It's far too easy to mistake a weapon's power for your own actual strength. At the end of the day, a true master never blames his equipment, and you and I both know that hits home. Especially for Giama, who nods his head in complete agreement. No more time to talk. The Sword Emperor tells the students to pick up their weapons and get started. Time to master the basics. Any cadet who can handle these ordinary weapons skillfully has a much higher probability of receiving a top score in the class, which directly affects their promotion evaluation at the end of the year. Trust me, you'll want to see this. This little tidbit gets the rest of the class hyped, and they start scrambling. They all rush to grab whatever weapon they can get their hands on, but Giama, he goes for the sashimi knife. It was just lying on the floor, unnoticed. The second he picks it up, he feels Siegfried's eyes locked right on him. The students regroup after grabbing their gear. And Siegfried announces they'll spend the day getting used to their new weapons through some one-on-one training drills. No subspaces, just pure sparring. And to make sure nobody gets too crazy, Siegfried decides he should probably give them a little demonstration. Li Wanbin steps up, getting ready to face the legendary Sword Emperor. But you can see him shaking. It's obvious he is not ready for this. This has to be the single biggest crisis of his entire life so far. But Siegfried, he has a completely different opponent in mind. He calls for Giama to step forward for the spar. This is where it gets interesting. Siegfried is also holding a basic weapon from the junk pile, but in his hands, it looks deadly. The other students are just watching, totally confused and jealous. Why is the Sword Emperor himself personally calling out some nobody like Giama? Giama steps forward. Before they begin, Sif asks if his bones have healed. He gets a yes. Then he tells our main character to draw his sword. This is just a friendly sparring match. But Giama knows this is way too much, crossing blades with the Sword Emperor. This isn't going to end with just a few scratches. If things get out of control, someone is definitely losing a hand. And if they're really unlucky, maybe even a head. Despite those dark thoughts, something inside him, maybe the divine power, is screaming for a real fight. Giama tries to talk his way out of it, saying he's nothing compared to the Emperor. He asks Siegfried to lower his weapon. Of course, his classmates start whispering. They're mocking him from behind, calling him a coward for backing down. Siegfried isn't impressed either, calling Giama out for still hiding his true power. For hiding his pride as a swordsman, you and I know he's hitting a nerve right there. All that talent wasted on someone who lives like a total coward. That word pride was etched into Giama's heart the moment he became the greatest swordsman in his entire country. It's the very reason why he could never truly put down his sword. This whole thing is a test. The Sword Emperor is provoking him, pushing all the right buttons. And if he backs down now, he knows he'll regret it for the rest of his life. He can't just ignore his pride. He can't ignore that burning urge to fight. Li Wanbin sees the shift in Giama's eyes and rushes to stop this. But Siegfried just holds him back. It's too late. Giama's already decided. He slides the sashimi knife from its sheath, readying his stance. It's on. The two of them stare each other down. Even at 70 years old, Siegfried can vividly recognize the glow of enlightenment gained through the sword. It reminds him of his youth, when a one-armed wandering knight taught him the way. The swordsmanship that knight showed him was on a completely different level. And now, this kid he's been watching since the very first test, Kang Giama, might just be the one to lead him back to that legendary realm. Giama takes the initiative, exploding forward at Siegfried. Trust me, you're going to want to see this. All right, let's jump right in as the swordmaster greets Giama with a nasty slash. But Giama is quick enough to dodge, spinning around for another strike. Siegfried deflects, and their swords clash once more. The sheer boldness of Giama charging head-on actually inspires the Sword Emperor. As they continue to battle, Siegfried realizes Giama's physical abilities have gotten a massive boost. He can even push him back now. Effortlessly, but Siegfried's blade is heavy, and he isn't about to take this fight lightly. Meanwhile, the other students are just watching, completely clueless about what's actually happening. To them, Giama just got lucky last time during the subspace sparring match against Nox. And yet, the Sword Emperor himself is taking this special admission student so seriously. They're just hoping the Sword Emperor teaches him a lesson he won't forget. But after several minutes, all they see are the two of them standing there. Just staring, Li Wanbin, however, knows exactly what's going on. See, they're not just standing still. We're witnessing something on a whole other level. Something the Wolf class instructor doubted was even possible. He'd warned Siegfried that if the headmaster found out, things could spiral. Plus, the other cadets could get caught in the crossfire. But Siegfried assured him he had no intention of clashing real swords with Giama. The instructor already knows our hero has a very special power. The ability to enter a place called the mental realm. To even enter this realm and survive a battle with Siegfried is insane. It means Giama's on a level they never could have imagined. And a duel in the mental realm is an intense battle of wits. Siegfried can tell Giama is growing at a terrifying rate. If that's the case, the Sword Emperor decides to stop holding back. Watch this. He activates a powerful blessing called Sword Spirit Protection. And even outside the mental realm, the students feel the insane pressure radiating from the two of them. That blue light from Siegfried's sword. That's some kind of powerful aura. It looks like the fight got so intense they broke out of the mental realm and back into reality. Things are about to get really messy. If Li Wanbin doesn't stop this now, there's going to be bloodshed. But before he can move, Giama and Siegfried launch at each other until a loud cry stops them cold. Medea arrives just before their swords can clash again. Her appearance is so full of rage, the very ground beneath her cracks apart. The fight is over. Siegfried is dragged to Medea's office for a scolding. He tries to apologize, but the headmaster isn't having any of it. She tears into him for going completely wild and picking a fight with a student. Especially after all the trouble she went through just to get him a spot as an instructor at the academy.